I didn't want to wreck him. It just I had to stay on the track, and he didn't give me any room. It just, we both collided. That's the only thing I feel bad about. I'm more upset with Greg Biffle. He's the most unprofessional little scaredy cat I've ever seen in my life. He wouldn't even fight me like a man after. He needs a freaking whooping. I'm going to give it to him.
Good day, race fans, and welcome to the Intentional Wreck Podcast. Podcast made by race fans for race fans, from the casuals to the lifelong gearheads. My name is Jeff, and I'm here with my fellow hosts Corey and Finn, and you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, under the name Intentional Wreck. You can also find us on Twitter and TikTok under the handle intwreckpod. Tic-tac. Look at me go. It's been a little while. All right. As you can see, my stumbles aside, we have a guest with us here today. He's coming to us by way of Houston. He's a Navy vet and has a 5,000 rating on iracing. Please be sure to check him out on Twitch at NickKaufman2. Welcome in, Nick. We're happy to have you. Why don't you kick us off by telling folks a little about yourself?
Hello, happy to be here. I was in the Navy 10 years. I was in when Brandon first joined the Navy and got to Hawaii. That's how I met him. I am a diehard race fan, NASCAR fan, F1 fan, pretty much anything with an engine. Jimmy Johnson fan, like Brandon. So we have had a lot to talk about in Hawaii. And yeah, I got out, moved to Houston. I'm in cybersecurity now and do a lot of iRacing. So it's one of my big hobbies. But happy to be here.
That's
Nick
awesome.
regularly kicks my ass. He's been a very good teacher by example.
For anybody that hasn't seen, these three are all in the same racing league, and they're a few races deep now. I was able to catch a couple of them, or at least the tail end, and you can kind of see some disparity between where Corey and Finn fall compared to where Nick sits closer to the top. When you're looking at the leaderboard.
Stop. I ran a faster lap than Nick last race. I ran the fastest lap out of everybody on the track. I don't want to hear nothing.
That's true. And if it was a one-lap race, then you would have won it.
I was going to say, it's a good thing races are only a single lap, because
let it be known.
That's where your championship's coming in.
It's not a skill problem. It's a tire-saving problem.
Definitely. Let's change the package. Let's change the iRacing package.
That's what I'm saying.
Which is a very, very common subject that we will actually touch on a little bit later, but we are coming in today, the day after the Richmond race, where Corey and I were in attendance, and we wanted to recap that and a little bit of our experience. It was a bit of a soggy day. We went through just about the entire afternoon anticipating going back the next day because it was just off and on showers, drizzles, and full-on raining throughout most of the afternoon in the tailgate. Thank goodness we had a canopy to cover up the grill and make sure we could still get some good food and conversation going on outside before we got in. And then there at the very end of the night, it was pretty rough, and it's a good thing we actually did finish racing last night, because otherwise it would have made for a very long experience. At the time that we finished up and left the track last night, we had a hotel room booked. We were all set to go. We went back to go check in after we got done racing, and sure enough, the hotel got overbooked, and Corey and I both had a nice long, he had a little over an hour drive home, I had a little over 2-hour drive home myself. So rolling in at 2:30 in the morning.
Yeah. Wait,
last night was definitely
you guys pre-booked it and didn't have it when you came back?
We booked a hotel room 3 weeks ago, got there at 12:15. They had overbooked the hotel, and the guy told me, we got nothing.
That's crazy. It's blasphemy.
I got home at 1:30 in the morning, and Jeff had an hour drive longer than me. So,
dude, name and
you heard it here. Hotels.com. That's not the way to do it.
Yeah,
it seems like it. I spent a little time on the phone with them today.
Oh,
I will blame any of, like, if I misspeak or if I step out or anything and mess anything up, let's blame it on lack of sleep from that this morning. But
spot on. It was a good day at Richmond. the rain kind of was spitting on and off throughout the day, a little here, a little there, sometimes heavy, sometimes not. It was nice. It was my first night race ever, so that was cool, right? The cars look really cool, and it's just a different vibe. By the way, Finn, it was freezing cold as expected, wet,
Whatever.
raining, and cold.
Excuses.
It's Virginia at night in March. That's just what it is. But it was a good time. I don't know if I mean I haven't gone back and watched the broadcast, but Jeff, did you feel like the crowd was a little sparse? I felt like, even though
Yeah.
I mean I get that it was Easter, I understand all of that, but like
It was
the
also
crowd was a
raining.
little more.
Yeah.
Well, and it was raining, true. So, but like the last couple of races we've been to at Richmond were a little more densely packed in the crowd. The crowd was pretty light last night, all things considered, I thought.
Yeah, well, I mean, by the end, when we were at those last like 30 laps or so on the last round of pit stops, I literally had enough room to have stood up, stepped away from everybody else as I was flailing my arms, screaming and pounding on the bleachers as Denny was making his way up through the field, and had plenty of room to do that while only
Yeah.
mildly disturbing just about anybody. So we definitely had enough room for that. I could have jumped up and done jumping jacks and not hit a soul. So we were right at the turn. We were right at the corner of turn one, and yeah, there was folks around, but it was a little more sparsely populated, and I blame a lot of the weather for that more than anything
Yeah.
else. I think the summer night race, I think, will show a little more of what night racing will look like at Richmond with capacity if the weather cooperates with that. But yeah, it was definitely it wasn't quite as packed full as you might
Yeah.
normally expect. But I mean, all in all, like when we get to the actual racing itself, the way I would have summed that up is I would have said those first, like, I don't know, 75 laps or so, and especially in the very beginning when they were running on the rain tires, awesome. Everything looked real cool. There was a couple different lines to go. Everything was moving pretty fast, and there was, strategy coming involved. They were going, when are we going to, jump out of these tires? When are we going to go to slicks? What's going to happen when there was a lot of storylines to go through. And
Yeah.
then you had a lot of single file, kind of sleepy racing going on there in the middle chunk. And then you get down to the last 50 or 60 laps and you see a lot more strategy getting involved. Who's going to pit? When are they going to pit? You had multiple different points where you had people running to try and catch the leader. You had tires really come into play. I would have said the last 50 to 75 laps of that race were awesome. The beginning of the race was good and the middle was kind of sleepy. I don't know, Corey, what would you say from the in-person perspective?
I agree. I mean, it was pretty clear the middle of that race, no one could pass. Like it was just watching cars go around in a parade. You had a couple interesting things here and there, but we didn't see anybody running a high groove. I was paying close attention to that. We had the phantom caution there at the end of stage 2. It was just kind of a sleepy race between 50 good laps at the beginning, 50 good laps at the end, and then 300 good laps of 300 parade laps in the middle was kind of.
I'm glad that you mentioned the phantom caution because, like, Finn, you came in and kind of saved us on that because in attendance and even with the radio going, I didn't know until you told me that Busch hit the wall. I had no idea why they went to caution at that one point in the middle of the race.
Yeah. If I can elaborate.
There was nothing.
Yeah, if I'll elaborate. So, Richmond is not a track that you're expecting cautions during longer green flag runs. It's just not a track where it's known for being slick, but it's not really a track. I mean, I think for years, up until there was a Kurt Busch spin when he was in the one car before, I think it was before even Trackhouse, and that was like the first spin under caution in years, or under green for years at that, or what is it called? What do they call it? Caution for wreck or something.
Cause.
Huh?
Caution for cause.
Caution for cause, right? That's the term. So that's just not something you expect with Richmond. And not to mention, you look back to last year with what happened to Noah Gragson and a lot of guys when they burn up that right front brake rotor on those flat tracks and the Breaking New Hampshire's another one where just eventually it just gets so hot that things just kind of break and it just kind of sails off into the corner and hits the wall. And I will admit that out the gate, Busch got out of the groove and then it just kind of sailed up into the wall, and that NASCAR was probably oh Jesus, that's bad. It's going to be worse than it was. And he just kind of hit the wall, bounced off it, and kind of looked like he would have been able to limp it around. And it was in front of the leader. If that happened somewhere else and it wasn't right in front of Martin Truex, I could also see like they would let it go. I do think they're itching at Richmond because of the fact that you don't get those cautions for cause and restarts. I think they're a little itchy. Like, all right, because NASCAR fully believes that restarts are the greatest things in humanity, and it's not always the case, but did lead to some interesting situations. Bowman got extremely screwed. You mentioned about the strategy, so I'll talk about that. So, because I want to get the discussion about why was the wet tire better, and Nick could probably elaborate a bit on that and stuff. But first, that stage 2 was really good. The decision by the leaders, Larson, Wallace, Barry, Bowman, all of those guys decided we're going to split the stage in half and go one pit, and how long can we run around on these tires, and can we just stay close enough in lap time that when we do get the fresh tires, we wrap back around and catch up. And that was the case for like Larson and Wallace. They were kind of unable to lap themselves after their eventual pit. Whereas,
Yeah.
sorry, I had to step away. We're cutting back now. Chaos ensued. So the strategy was playing out fantastic. And that's the only thing that can save a dog shit passing track is different strategies, different tires, people trying to make things. And what strategy is going to pay off at the end of the stage? And then what are they going to do on the next stage? What did we learn from that and how do we apply it? And then a caution occurs, and that trapped Bowman, a top 5 car, in a lap down and in the teens, and then he was fighting around. So we went from a situation where he was trying to save himself and stay on the lead lap, as Truex was running him down. He couldn't hold him off. But like, you're looking at that and you're like, wow, the 48 has a car that can compete with Martin Truex Jr. when they're really pushing.
Truex really wanted to trap him a lap down too.
Yeah. So he
Badly.
was really not liking that because the 48 I wouldn't say the 48 did not have speed. I'm going to be honest with you. The 4 was absurdly fast last night.
He was the only one that could really pass.
He was the only one who could pass after slicks. And,
Yeah.
and what I saw,
Barry had a hell of a day.
What I saw from the broadcast,
hats off to
he
him,
was
man.
able to
made
kind of
great.
move up a lane, almost diamond off exit, and really get down in there. And he was playing a little aggressive. A lap before he spun Daniel Suarez, he also got into the left rear of Buescher when he was.
Yeah, he was
fighting
moving
overnight.
people.
He was not afraid, and that's that kind of short track mentality. And you know what? It was solid. I really enjoyed it, and I think Nick, you talk a little bit about the tread difference, but I think we got our answer with what's wrong with the short track package. It's not horsepower per se. I'm always a big horsepower proponent, but like, what's the general difference between the slicks versus the wet tire?
Well, I'm always a fan of more horsepower, especially at short tracks, because if you have more horsepower, you have less grip, and less grip is ultimately the thing that brings down, or more grip is the thing that brings down racing, short track racing in general, because nobody really has problems, and it's very easy for guys to save tire because there's so much grip.
Right.
So obviously, the rain tires have grooves in them, so it's not a flat contact patch like the slicks are. They also heat up faster because it's a different compound of rubber.
Right.
So the hotter a tire gets, the more, slick and slimy it gets, and the more you slide around. People who save tire are good at combating that and keeping their tires cool. You don't really see that a whole lot with the slick tire, but Josh Berry, he was a short track racer by trade. Junior put him in a late model and he dominated. And then that's how he got his Xfinity ride and ultimately his Cup ride. So that was his bread and butter. Any short track that they go to is going to be his bread and butter. And he was able to pass so many people because he had, the mindset of, I will have to move people, because number one, they were shifting. At Richmond, they have to shift basically, but that kind of negates any speed that you lose in the corner because you can just downshift real quick and get back on the gas. So there was really no way to be faster than the guy in front of you, or fast enough to pass the guy in front of you without kind of putting the bumper to him.
Yeah.
That rings a question to me, because that's one thing I'm always kind of interested in when it comes to a combination of both the strategy and what folks are generally trying to do to compensate for either missteps or compensate for the condition. Is one of the things I'm always kind of wondering is you hear about some of the drivers that are a little better at shifting and a little better at kind of getting out on exit and a little bit better at doing that. Does that, how much of a difference do those abilities really play on trying to compensate for, you know, a track where you can't necessarily pass as well, like the way Richmond was playing a little more last night? Can you make up for that more so with more ability to shift, with more being able to time a lot of that, with being able to try and compensate by saving tires or knowing when to go? Like,
Yeah,
where do you know, where does that line draw?
the shifting is really a crutch for a lot of the guys, because you can really throw it in deep, to a corner, outbrake the guy that might be outside of you, and just downshift really quick, and then get a good run off the exit. The tires didn't really come into play much, in my opinion, last night after the track dried off and there were two and a half grooves that were actually racing. It looked like old Richmond to me. I don't know if there was really much difference between the short track package of now and the short track package of yesteryear. The only way that they're going to overcome, a train of cars really is to limit the amount of downforce that the cars can have, raise the cars up, in my opinion, and maybe make the tires thinner. The tires are so wide on those cars that they have a huge contact patch.
And upgraded
I also
brakes.
think, upgraded brakes. I also think that they could make a penalty for shifting. You don't have to change, the gear out of the car. Just make it to where, hey, you have to stay in fifth unless you drop under a certain RPM or something. There's ways that you can make the racing better. I just don't think that NASCAR thinks that the racing is that bad.
No, and that's one thing is, like, you hear a lot of, people like constantly like beating certain drums. I know for Richmond, one of the things people will often point to is state that Richmond needs to be repaved and that a new surface will bring a little more life to the track compared to what we've seen over the last couple of years. And the thing is, just in general, to me, with short track racing, one of the things that is compelling, I mean, a lot of people will point to Rex or they'll point to other things, but like one of the things that, like, once you've been watching for a little while and you really start to get into it, that gets compelling to me is like you start to see some elements of skill when it comes to who can brake properly, who can find those proper grooves, and who can find different ways to, manipulate their car around the track, as opposed to when you're watching a super speedway and it's just hammer down, and you're hard in some cases on some tracks you're hardly even lifting at all. Braking is a huge part on some of the short tracks, and being able to like actually showcase some skill. And it's one of those things where like that balance isn't always there. And I always kind of wonder how much we're moving in a direction of, or at least I should phrase it this way. I am always a little concerned when it comes to taking some of those things away from guys who are actually skilled at it, in lieu of creating more compelling racing, because like, how much are you tempering skill to increase compelling product, right? But that's just, that's kind of the nature of the beast, and that's what falls on NASCAR in trying to make things a little more entertaining too. So
Yeah, they want every race to be like Talladega. I mean, that's why they reconfigured Atlanta the way that they did, to make it a draft pack. And people love watching the last 10 laps at Talladega and Daytona, because they're going to see wrecks, and anybody could win, because it's really a luck game at that point. You have to position yourself well during the race and stay out of wrecks, stay out of trouble, and all of that. It doesn't not take skill, but it's more of a anybody can win type of deal. You don't see that at short tracks. The specialists shine at short tracks, and the guys who can really get their elbows out and handle a car and are smooth and know their inputs and know just how far that they can push that car, they're the guys that win races at short tracks.
I want to throw just on top of that point, because not only did we see Josh Berry, who looked incredible the moment that there was a competitive tire, and even then, even after the case. But if you look at the Xfinity race, Junior put, I guess, another short track legend, Bubba Pollard, in the 88 for this race. He was first in practice, went out first for qualifying, and was a little kind of confused and intimidated by like the pace. He didn't know that he just needed to run what he ran in practice. He kind of pushed it. And then he ended up starting 27th. He drove all the way through the field. He finished top 5, I believe. And then I know Taylor Gray, and he started in the 19th, back of the pack, drove all the way front. So we know that Rich. Yes. Baby girl. Okay, you can have a lollipop. Can I take it off? You just have got to act for it.
Lollipop break.
811.
All right. I know you got a blue. Go play car race. Crazy child. So yeah, Taylor Gray in the 19 moving all the way. So we know that Richmond is a track that has good racing. I genuinely think that NASCAR needs to look at the Bristol situation, and we're going to talk about that shortly, and look at how amazing that was. Granted, it's a different package. It's not a flat track. Bristol is Bristol. But we've got to do something because we've got Richmond on the schedule. Sucks. Not horrible, but just like sucks. We've got Phoenix on the schedule. Sucks. We've got Worldwide Technology on the schedule. Sucks. We've got New Hampshire on the schedule, and they suck.
And there's a lot of speculation that Richmond's going to lose one of their dates.
Right. And not only when I say it sucks, because all right, for example, we're Jimmy fans, Nick. We would love to see, especially when Jimmy was still racing, like crank it up to 1,000. And if you're a Larson fan, if you're a Bell, a Briscoe fan, a Reddick, like you want 1,000. But if you're not that kind, there's guys that excel in the current package, the Logano's and the Hamlin. Like they just, their style is not wing it loose and throw it up in the high lane and go, right? It's more methodical and good on momentum. And so you can't like just shred one whole style of racing in favor of another just because your favorite or my favorite driver is that. But like there's no drivers per se that just excel at this short track, and just nobody can pass. And it's just so
Denny
frustrating.
Hamlin does. Denny Hamlin does.
Denny Hamlin, kinda.
He excel. I mean, like for
At
better
Richmond,
or worse,
yes.
For better or for worse, I've been to Richmond 3 times, and Denny Hamlin's won 2 of them. He's won there 5 or 6 times now. Like
He's very good at Richmond.
He's got something at this track. Like I get that Truex dominated the race, and Denny kind of got helped out by his employee the last 2 laps of the race, but
Show loss.
I mean,
Yeah.
he
should
was
still lose the race.
If that race is 5 laps longer, Denny Hamlin wins it without the caution. So there's guys out there I think that they've got something, whether it's domination or not.
I would be okay. I would be
Well,
okay.
look at Larson in Vegas. I
if
would say
they
it's almost
killed
similar there.
stages at Richmond, because when those strategies play out, it's good. But stage racing just constantly resets everybody to the same strategy.
I think they should kill stage cautions everywhere.
Oh,
I think they should keep the stages, keep the stage points, because that does incentivize guys to get off schedule and go get those stage points, and that brings more strategy into it.
Right.
But don't neutralize the race.
Right.
Keep the race going unless there's a caution for cause.
Right. Yeah. That's its own gripe. Now let's talk about another thing with that race. So back to the strategy. So they're going, and Denny. So Bell did the strategy first, right? Stay out significantly longer. Yes, lose a little bit of time. But if you looked at how Bell's strategy worked out at Coda, we'll talk about that. It kind of was the same thing. Like get the new tires on and try to catch the field running while everybody's doing their own thing. But he sped down pit road, and he ruined his chance. So then Hamlin turns around and says, I'll do the same thing. And I will say that led to some great racing at the end as he's trying to bleed through. Chase Briscoe held up Truex a ton, and people just not wanting to go a lap down. Chastain did a little bit too. People just not wanting to get lapped. Even Logano kind of was catching him as we go. And so then the unfortunate, really, really late caution. What was it? Oh, it was the Larson spin and things like that. That was solid. And then here we go, the big fiasco that's occurring. And I still think I don't know. Something tells me that they're not gonna. If they would have done it, they would have done it already.
No, they're not going to change it.
But
No, they did the replay there.
They said everything was fine.
which
Yeah.
is insane. Which is Jeff. We're not attacking Denny. Did you see the
What's up?
replay?
Oh man, dude, I was at the end of that race. I was standing up screaming "Thank you, Bubba" at the end of that race. Okay, so
Right.
I'm well aware that I got lucky getting
Right.
to walk
Listen,
away and see my
I'm
driver win in
over.
person
Listen,
again.
I'm over lucky wins in NASCAR. Like it's fine. It's fine. He got stripped from his ability to win on his strategy. I don't hate that it happened.
Well-
Whatever. But
well-
that being said, he went early as shit.
Yeah, very early.
Extremely early. And that begs the question. I'll start with Corey. Was it so bad, or is that something that you think NASCAR needs to like hammer, and why? Like yes or no, and why?
It's tough, right? Because here's the thing. If Denny's pit stop is 1 second slower, he's not the one he's not the control car anyway.
Okay.
So like in reality, did he jump the start? Did he go before the line? Yes, he did. But they need if they are going to get firm about it, it needs to be right away. Like use SMT, use something that's like whatever the system is, it needs to be automated, and it needs to be like he has jumped the start, almost like something in iRacing, right, where it just does it, and it immediately puts out the yellows, and we're doing it again, right? The key to it is he was the control car because his pit crew was 2 seconds faster than Truex's on the money stop. Right. So,
but it's not.
You know,
there's
like,
a defined...
don't lose the race off pit road.
Right,
and then
but my thing is yes, he was the control car, but there is a clear painted line, and this is where I think so. NASCAR, we're already the sport of not that many rules, right? Like F1 guys watching our road racing cringe constantly, right. And they're like, "He moved him out of the way," and I'm like, "Yeah, Dilly, that's part of it," you know, like. He doesn't have to give the position back. No.
I like how our one friend has become the single like amalgam figure of all F1 fans apparently. But yeah.
You know, like anybody that's watched NASCAR, like they can't do that. Like, listen, we don't have that many rules in NASCAR. Don't right rear somebody. Okay. Don't go below the yellow line at these tracks. And that is like a hard, like you go below the yellow line to pass. Boom, you forfeit. Don't cut the S's at COTA. They took SVG second place, threw him back in 28th just a week ago. Okay, right. So
I think that penalty is too harsh.
I think that is a hair harsh too. I think a 5-second penalty. We can do second penalties in NASCAR. We're in the 21st century. Right. All right, 5-second penalty for cutting the S's. Got it. And then puts him probably in 7th. All right, but you know he's fine. He'll be fine. He'll win one of the other ones. But I think since it's so few, and this is clear, this isn't subjective. There is a painted line on the track, okay? Like, it's there, and it is very clear that he went early, and I think that's got to be, like, it has to be something that's enforced because that you can't push, like, you can't just keep pushing it backwards, Well, Denny didn't. Denny went. Why do I have to get back flat when Denny clearly went? And you're right, SMT data.
Right.
They got Larry McReynolds breaking down a virtual AI GPT generated car that breaks apart the whole thing. But you're telling me when it's time to just show Denny Hamlin, they had the technology to show the 3-wide finish at Atlanta and how close they were, but they don't have the technology to tell them. And they had the technology to prove that Alex Bowman wasn't ahead of Byron at Daytona, but they don't have the technology to just show that he went right there. And I think, honest to God, I mean, not that I hate Denny, but I think that that's so egregiously early. And such an egregious, like, clear out rule, black and white rule. Do not accelerate past the speed limit. What are they, like 65 or 45 under caution? It's Richmond, so it's probably like 40, 50.
45, yeah.
Yeah. Cannot go, speed in the restart. I don't know if you can throw the caution to re-rack.
Have to. That's my only thing. I'm with you on it being a hard line.
Or black
if it's immediate. If it's immediate.
I don't think you do. Look at last lap passes at Talladega going below the yellow line. That's just a DQ.
DQ.
You know,
to the back. And you know what? Denny would have been a perfect thing because he's already in the playoffs, so it doesn't really hurt him. And
the leader, being the car that sets the pace and gets to fire off first, has such an advantage over the rest of the field that's a game that you play. You know, you have that advantage, but you also, if you go early and misuse that advantage and take that advantage too far,
Right.
DQ'd.
Right.
You know,
Right. Because
I mean, I think he went so early. If you've seen the in car from Truex, it's egregious. And NASCAR not coming down hard on this one, like they could still take the win away tomorrow if they wanted to.
I would be fine.
And
I
just
know it's crazy.
move
2 days
him,
later,
you
if they
know,
took the win away,
I'd be fine with
I'd
it.
be
Move him to the tail end of the lead lap.
Right.
You know, just put him tail end lead lap in front of all the lap cars. If you don't want to DQ him. But at what point is it going to be too early? Because like Brandon said, you know, the next guy that does it is going to say, well, Denny did it. Why can't I?
Right.
Why can't I go in the middle of the backstretch coming to the green? You know?
it's like me
Well-
with the lead in iRacing. I mean, the moment that pace car peels off, I'm
Boom.
fucking gone, dude. You think
Well,
I'm letting you
that's-
nerds catch me? Absolutely not.
Well,
Nope.
that's it. What you this discussion is interesting because it's very much like it's insert different scenario in rule here for the way that NASCAR tends to operate in general. We operate in gray areas all the time and always try and work with different flexibility. I mean, look at the penalty situation last year when we were coming down to like different aspects of parts, when we were talking about OEM manufacturers, when we were talking about docking points. You know, there's just about every fan of just about every team in this sport can point to an incident at some point where they felt like somebody, you know, got the longer end of the stick than they did on a particular situation. Now, I'll like my perspective on this one in general. I mean, first off, like as far as what actually happened, in person, I couldn't really catch it. Now, going back and watching it, I was like, oh, yep, he hit it. You know, it was pretty obvious. So is what it is. And I will also be one of the first ones to say that caution was exactly what saved any, aside of them adding an extra 10 laps to the race.
Let me just say
In
real
general.
quick, anybody watching the broadcast couldn't tell at all.
I heard
Because
that.
They didn't have it
the
on.
broadcast was showing 21st position whenever the leader took the green flag.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Now,
heard the-
that's interesting.
I heard the end of the race broadcast was terrible.
Fox was horrible.
The only shining part was they did a good job at hyping up the reason for the Bowman and Truex battle. I felt like that was a highlight by the broadcast, as well as catching quickly that Barry was moving up through the field, and they showed a lot of Barry on the screen.
But
yeah.
see, that says a lot about Fox right there, because those are relatively mundane things that any broadcast should focus on.
Right, yeah,
And we're saying, "Oh, Fox, you did a good job," because you usually don't do that.
right,
Mm.
right.
And then you missed the final restart.
Yes.
Now,
That's
my-
well, and there's a few points because we've made plenty of our own criticisms of the
oh, dude,
the Fox broadcast on
hate-
this show. But
dude, if I
one of the things,
if I could get access to the cameras, I guarantee I could do a better broadcast than anything Fox is doing. With a crew of 3 people, like us 3, I genuinely think like we could put it together.
Yeah.
Just give me the.
I would
cameras
love to watch
available.
this.
Because there's no amount of knowledge that Clint Boyer is giving about NASCAR on that broadcast that I can't Google in 5 minutes. Like, sorry, dude.
There was, speaking of Fox, since we got on the subject, this was one I texted Corey and Finn about this one because I was rolling while I was watching the Xfinity race on Saturday,
Oh.
and we were watching they cut to side by side towards the end during the moment where it was right after it was the caution, and when his name's escaping me, but when
Ace?
Cram was driving by and the other guy threw the rear bumper at him, the broadcast, the moment of this was amazing because the race is on the left side, dead silent in its block, while we're watching whopper ads over on the right side, while a guy is jumping out of his car, ripping parts off of it, and running down the track and throwing a piece of it at another driver. So it's like, here's his, like, try NyQuil to go to sleep, and this guy's like, and throwing
I'll send you
car
sleep
parts.
to hell.
Dude, it was just magical. Like this great incident. It felt like you were watching like something you weren't supposed to see.
Like racing at Bowman Gray Stadium.
Yeah, exactly. It was
NASCAR's buying,
amazing.
so be ready. My last
Yeah.
note I want to bring up before we move on to the other 2 races that occurred since our last pod. This a note I read again. I wish I could give credit to the guy, but I lost the Reddit comment. But he said that we should change the lap time for green white checker to be track specific. So super speedway gets two laps, 1.5 miles get 2 laps, road courses get 1 lap, and short tracks get 5 laps. What are your thoughts on that?
Are we saying distance specific?
Distance,
Because
green
like,
white check. I know it like green white checkered and like overtime. So NASCAR overtime.
Yeah,
somebody-
yeah.
I thought it was an interesting point, and I think I'm in favor of it for a couple reasons. One, it fixes the road course issue of like extending races 45 minutes
sure.
because you have to rack. Like one chance at a green white checkered, wham, obviously what's going to actually happen is somebody's going to turn the leader. Second place going to turn the leader and then win the race, which is its own beast and animal. Maybe like you have to get halfway through the lap, that one lap before
I would
say, but like
I would say, having unlimited attempts at green white checkers, terrible thing. I think I think anywhere you go, you should have at least 2 laps, because if the leader gets just a huge jump on the restart, then it neutralizes any race for the win.
if he does it correctly in the restart zone, I am a fan.
That doesn't matter.
Okay,
That doesn't matter.
Of letting him have the advantage. That's the point.
I'm telling you,
If-
I'm
going to
going
quote
whenever
Corey,
I
have a faster pit stall. Stop.
That's right.
If you want the advantage, just do it inside.
I'm taking the
Geico.
green flag at the end of pit road after my pit stop.
Dude, yeah.
But no, I think that it should be at least 2 laps. But I think, especially at road courses, even, only have 1 green white checker and tell the guys, hey, don't wreck people, because you're not going to gain positions and the race is going to be neutralized, and nobody wants that.
Right. Or I would see a situation like, hey, scoring loop wise, like for example, Coda, obviously that turn 1 is chaos. And if you know that there's the only opportunity like to win a race, you're going to send somebody off, right? But if it's like, hey, if we throw this flag before this scoring loop in the S's, after you go downhill, right, and then hit the S, then we're going back to the starting lineup, taking green. We'll end the race at the lineup that hit green. Does that make sense? So it's like so you have to find a way to race clean in that instance, because if you cause a wreck, it doesn't matter if you moved up 20 spots or wreck the leader. He wins the race by the proxy of that situation. I don't know how to make it perfect, but I thought it was interesting specifically to road courses and specifically to short tracks. I think 5 laps would be better. I mean, I don't think it's going to save you at Richmond. Him jumping that start stopped Truex from being able to pin him down, and at Richmond, unless you're planning on moving somebody.
So to clarify, though, you're talking about, okay, if you were to do 5 laps at a short track, which lap is the white flag lap? The second lap or the 4th lap?
What do you mean 5 laps? It's just consider
The
overtime.
5th lap.
5 laps.
Okay.
We take
Oh,
green.
well, okay, right.
5 laps.
Yes, that's what I meant.
Dude, imagine throwing the white flag and you don't know which of the last 4 laps is going to be the final one.
Is this the last lap, or is
Dude,
this the last
NASCAR
lap?
would do some dumb shit like that. We're going to run 5 lap overtime.
I was
We're going to throw the white the second time around.
Yeah.
like,
Larry Mack's
that's
going to
the
roll a
point.
dice between 1 and 4, and whatever one
But,
it
like,
lands
that's-
on, that'll be the
It's a
final
lottery.
lap.
It's
We're
the
away.
mystery flag lap. Here we
Also,
go. You don't know when
after
it's
the
going
first
to
lap.
end.
Also, we're
And
racing
then-
all 5 of them, even if the third one ends the race.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's the key.
Nobody
Just
will
for
know.
principle.
I'm
It's
like,
just-
wait, I'm gonna make sure I understand this right.
It's just Larry
No,
Mack on a Twitch stream. Like,
Yeah.
it's the third one. You know?
I like the idea of 5 laps at a short track, because there is less track, obviously,
Right.
so there's less time to
Getting
make
going.
up for the advantage that the leader has for being the jump car, in Denny Hamlin's case. But I like that idea. I still think that there shouldn't be an unlimited number of green white checkers.
I think that comes with that caveat of like, we're doing 5, but 1
One.
to 2 tries, obviously. Another thing,
One track.
I think that would change the dynamic of, all right, we got a caution, we're going to overtime. Who's taking tires?
Yeah.
Because now you got 5
Right.
laps to make up maybe 10 to 15 spots on the newest tires in the field than a situation where you have none. I think that could lead to something
Or-
interesting.
If you're deep in the field, you gamble that there's going to be a caution and there's not another green white checker.
Oh, interesting. The Kyle
and-
Busch at
and you-
Coda when he,
Yeah.
he
Did
just
anybody else think it was weird that nobody just tried taking 2 tires on that last restart last night? Just
I think it was just a hair too long of tires. I think Denny probably could have, but he ended up first anyways.
But that's what I'm saying. Somebody who was a little deeper back in the pack.
Well, we talk
right?
about
Just
that
be
a
like,
lot, right? Yeah.
F it.
Just
Right.
hold
That's
them
what I'm
off.
saying. Like, that's been one thing that I found interesting in my time as a fan is like 2 tires works a lot of times. And maybe
Corey's a big 2-tire
I'm
advocate.
sitting
As
there going
far
to
as
myself,
guys on our
I think it's
show,
a
he's the
why
2-tire
why
guy.
not just take 2 tires? You're gonna leapfrog a bunch of people, and even if you don't win the race, like, you don't know what could happen. Anything could happen. They can start wrecking behind you, or God knows what, right?
They
Like,
could turn you.
Yeah.
sure, like you,
Yeah.
I mean, right, but like you're taking that control. Like, somebody could have taken 2 tires and gone from 10th to first.
Yeah, I do think
And
that's interesting that hard
no
like
one did.
nobody.
I think
Yeah.
I think that was a Richmond thing. I think Richmond is just so
Right, and
slick.
that's what I figured, right?
And it's like, because Harvick said straight up on the broadcast, he said, "You got to take 4 here. You got to take 4." Like that was
Okay.
his
So-
thing, and maybe that's just the nature of the beast. If somebody's got 4 next to you, good, because we are starting side by side, right? So if the guy to the
Sure.
right of you has 4, you're not making it out of that turn with the lead.
Right, you need 2
Yeah.
people to take 2.
Yeah,
Couple
and back to
teammates.
the weather aspect, it was colder, the track wasn't hot.
Yeah.
You need as much grip as you can have, and some parts of the track were still damp.
Yeah.
At that point, so
Would have just
Yeah.
loved to see like
that comes
Barry
into
and
play.
Gregson both take 2 and line up side by side at the front and just let
Yeet
the
it.
shit hit the fan. That would have been fun.
Listen,
Well, on this particular subject too. There were a couple aspects. For one, to me, I think like distance plays a role because if we're talking a half mile, the 5 lap sounds great. If we're talking more than that, then I think it starts to get like then you start treading into maybe it's 3 instead, or something. I love the idea of a single lap on a road course just because it takes a while. The other thing that, and this is just kind of a wild card thing, but it just feels like something that could happen, is if you set some sort of a timer or you set some kind of a limit on the re-rack as well. Because that's one of the other things that tends to prolong stuff, at the end of some of these races is how many laps are we going to go before you can stack these guys back up and then have them go? If you were to go at the end of these and say, okay, we are in overtime, you have exactly, 1 lap or you have exactly 2 laps to get to your spot in the pack or you're dumped. And then we're restarting whether you're going or not. And this is it, something along those lines to like just add to it or throw a flare in there. I mean, this is one of those some shit NASCAR would do type of thing. Because imagine they throw the timer up on the corner and they're like, "We got 20 seconds to get back to the pack in his spot, or he's getting thrown out." Like this is
no, but
that is
it
absolutely
can't happen
something that
because
would
Harrison Burton wrecked, and now there's oil everywhere, and you got to clean it up. I mean, maybe I don't know if there is a rule, but like a not allowing pit stops under green white checkered, like
That guy
what-
was driving a brick yesterday.
That dude is
Yeah.
always driving a brick. I think Todd Gilliland's first 20 laps, 50 laps of that race proved that he is. That's the thing we talk about. I think Todd Gilliland might be one of the better young prospects in the sport, Nick. And every week I watch him outdrive half the Penske cars.
yeah, he drives over his equipment definitely.
So good. So
Yeah.
now we burnt the bridge with Richmond. Nick, you went to Coda. Tell us a bit about your thoughts of your first NASCAR race in person and watching road course NASCAR racing. Where were you sitting? The whole deal.
Yeah, it was my first NASCAR race to ever go to. I used to race in high school, Saturday night short track racing. Much different, I can tell you that. A lot more people, but it was a 2.5 hour drive from Houston to Austin. We got there right as they were doing driver introductions. So we didn't go early and do, all the merch haulers and all the experiences and driver autographs, stuff like that. I thought that we weren't really going to have enough time to park and get in and find our seats. But I don't know if it's the same at other tracks, but at least at Coda, the parking there is awesome. They have tons and tons of parking. It's a huge facility. We pulled right in, parked, got out and walked directly through the gate. It was a very fast process to get through the gate. And then where we walked through the gate, we sat in turn 15. And it's right. So turn 12 is at the end of the long straightaway, right? And then it kind of snakes around turn 13, 14, and then snakes back around. to turn 15. So we sat right there so we could see the turn 12, the end of long straightaway, and then turns 13 through 16, where they were the lowest speed corners on the track, but they were the closest racing on the track because it was the lowest speed. So we got to our seats, and there wasn't a ton of people in these seats because there's so much seating at COTA, and there's so many different places that you can watch the race from, as well as just, sitting on the grass at some parts and watching the race. We actually were able to get up from our seats and find better seats a little bit further down the row and a little bit further up in the stands where we could see more. So it was a good experience. The race wasn't that great.
Agree.
So
Willie B dominated. I again don't like the stage cautions, especially at road courses. Just go back to
right.
not having stage cautions at road courses.
That weirded me out. I was surprised at it, and I just kind of felt like a dummy because
Yeah.
we got through the first stage, and I was like, wait, I thought we were done with this crap. Like, I thought it was over. Like, they went into caution. I was like, who wrecked? What happened?
I mean,
Me
they
too.
brought it back halfway through last year. I believe
Yeah.
they brought it back for the Chicago Street race and kept that
Hmm.
going. So it's I mean, they say that this race was boring and not as good as last year. Well, last year we had great pit strategy where Reddick double or pit one more than everybody else and was able to run
Yeah.
down the whole pack and pass everybody. And then we had the restarts and the whole thing. So my question to you is, Nick, you already made a mention the slower parts of the track, and I was actually I'm really thankful that Corey came to our sport and watched the Richmond race with me. Again, first experience in NASCAR, right? I don't even think you watched a race with me, right, Corey? Like, you just were generally like, all right, we're going to Richmond. It's my first time, whatever. Did you, or were we watching races prior?
I had watched a few things with you here and there during COVID when you'd like pull a stream up and it was
Right.
like, we'd be bored. I'd be bored watching something that you were showing. I'm like, I dabbled. I've had family that's watched NASCAR my entire life. Obviously, just met my cousin Jason and his family. Like they all are in NASCAR as well. But yeah, I mean, it was going to that first Richmond race that really like it made it click in my head. Like, this is awesome.
and while it was solid, I was always a little nervous because I'm always like, I'm excited to introduce people to sport, but for years it was to the 600, right? From about 05 on, I got to bring people every year to the 600 and have them experience the cars whipping by at about $1.90, and that is like life changing. And then
it's consistently one of the better races of the year.
Right.
yes,
Right.
right. It's the spectacle.
There's a reason we're going there this year.
Right.
Exactly.
And we are, and I'm
Right,
really
yeah.
excited for that because of that feeling. But I was like, ooh, he might be a little underwhelmed because the cars, they just don't look as quick in the corners at 90 miles an hour. And what you were watching, Nick, was probably closer to 40, 50, maybe even in some cases 30 miles.
Yeah,
They were getting
it
really
was
close.
some corners there probably got down to mid 50s.
And you understand racing, so I guess you weren't like, oh, that, sucked. You weren't some first-time experiencer, but were you a little overwhelmed, or were you like, this is what I expected? I knew what I was getting into coming to this part of the track.
I kind of knew what I was getting into. I loved there's nothing like hearing the cars
Right.
in person on the track, even if it's at a slow spot in the race, because right at turn 15, they downshift and get on the gas hard, and they're full
Ripping.
song going through 16, and it's just, it vibrates, and it just, you feel it,
Right.
and it's awesome. And just seeing the cars in person was pretty cool. Like seeing how they would, beat and bang off of each other in those slow corners and get runs off of the corner that other people couldn't get.
Right.
It was pretty cool. One of the things that I was underwhelmed of was the length of the cautions
Golly.
that we talked about a little bit earlier.
A lot of downtime.
Like you didn't know how long each caution would last. There was not a single caution for cause at COTA.
Yeah, good point. There really wasn't.
There was only stage cautions.
Yeah, none.
We saw right at turn 15, saw Daniel Suarez get spun. saw John Hunter Nemechek get sent by Corey LaJoy. A couple of more things, like 2 more people spun and just got
Great.
right back up and kept going, and the race was still was good. Which you don't need full course cautions at road courses unless something big happens that is dangerous for the rest of the competitors on the track. So there was a lot of downtime, and it was a short race because there were no cautions, and road courses just tend to be shorter in time in general.
Right.
So didn't have a lot of time to watch cars on the track. The ending of it, Christopher Bell making his way back up and trying to chase down Willie B. I think he would have gotten to Byron if there was another, I'd say 3 laps.
I'd say 2. He got within a second and
Yeah.
was able to read the bumper. I think it was the Raptor. Was there a lot of screens at the track to kind of help with following the rest of the race, like TV screens
Yeah.
and stuff like that? Okay.
Yeah, there was 2 screens that I could see.
Okay.
We ended up moving closer to one of them so that we could see it a little bit better. But I don't think that there was a bad seat at Coda, honestly, because you could just see so much of the track, and Coda is there's so much undulation in the terrain there that on TV it doesn't really do it justice just how uphill the climb into 1 is.
Oh, really?
And how downhill the long back straightaway is.
Yeah.
It's just so hilly there that it's you can really find a spot to watch any part of the track that you want.
Yeah.
So and we also had the Raceiver headphones to follow
Smart.
along with the MRN or PRN broadcast, one of the 2.
That's always that's a clutch one. I wear the headset
Yeah.
to the race every time because you got to go. I did.
Yeah, it makes it a lot better.
One thing I wanted to ask, because this, and I'll preface this because I'm very this is something I'm curious about, just as somebody who goes to a lot of sporting events in general, like across the spectrum. I love all my sports. I go to all kinds of different games. Running the gamut, right, from baseball to soccer to football to hockey to everything else, right. Now, one of the things that has always been interesting to me with NASCAR is the general infrastructure. So based on what you're describing, it sounded like Coda was pretty well put together in regard, like you mentioned, the parking, like the egress, getting out of the track. One thing I was wondering, what's security like at Coda?
Really, we walked through one metal
exactly.
detector.
Finn knows where I'm
I know
going with
exactly
this.
where I'm going, but go ahead, Nick.
We walked through. There was probably at the entrance I went through. There was a row of probably 5 or 6, lines that each
Mhm.
had a metal detector on it.
Yeah.
You go through the metal detector. I had car keys and stuff in my pocket that
Mhm.
didn't alarm the metal detector at all. And then they were doing some bag checks, I think. Not
Mhm.
very many. People would just look at you and be like, "Okay, come on." And that was it. It took all of 10 seconds to get through.
And
the
and
gate.
during the race, would you have actually been able to point out security people during like
No.
run of course? Okay, so that's one thing I'm interested in, because that is something that has always kind of baffled me with NASCAR. So at Richmond, I've seen this now in Richmond and at Dover, right? Having been at both of these tracks, like once that flag waves, security is like, where is it? Like, you wouldn't be able to like, and I'm talking about to the point of like, I will see things in the stands at NASCAR that like don't come up. Like, so last night on more than one occasion, people were just lighting up cigarettes in the bleachers, like while
Yeah.
watching the race, like, or
We're outside,
like,
Jeff.
yeah. Well, so there's that. Also, like, as our experience last year, we watched a guy openly attempt to take his pants off in the
was
middle of
crazy.
the race. That was, and
Nick,
it
can I
had to
tell
be
you
like
this?
a citizen takedown of this guy.
Nick,
Like,
can I
Hey,
tell
that's
you
there's other,
NASCAR.
Nick,
That's
can I-
yeah,
NASCAR.
Nick, can I tell you
right.
about
It's
this
very
guy?
well, right.
No.
It's just, it's always strange to me. Like when it was an eye-opening experience, because I'm like, damn, man. I'm like, because I got this little vape here. It's a little time. I have been pinpointed at baseball and football games from sections away by security and been hit like immediately of somebody coming up to me to tell me to put this thing away at, football and baseball games and stuff. And it gets spotted right away. Like I said, at NASCAR.
Right, because they're smoking cigarettes. If you vape at a NASCAR race, they'll just say, liberal, get the liberal.
They'll just punch you in the face.
Yeah.
It's just,
same with, I just
there were-
volunteered for the Houston Open, the PGA tournament, the golf
There you go.
tournament. And security was tight there too. And you have thousands and thousands of people constantly walking around the golf course. But anywhere that you go, you can find security.
Yeah.
So
Not that
it's odd that it's not at a NASCAR track.
I mean,
And the
there was a-
stumbling too, yeah. but-
There was a guy in front of us last night, and it's not illegal to be drunk at a NASCAR race, but our boy was hammer timed in front of me and Jeff last night. Dude was like laying down on the bleachers taking a nap.
That dude wasn't even there for
Like-
the race.
Like,
He
dude,
just-
it was
He just
And,
lives
you know,
there. He just lives
He
there.
had
throughout the-
just come back with some nachos, and he had a full second order of cheese that he was saving in his beard. Like,
it was a sloppy boy.
That's hilarious.
He was just
Yeah.
for the background
That
noise.
was-
That's
you
part
know?
of
Had a great time. Don't
I
get me
saw my
wrong,
first
but-
pair of boobs from a Junior fan. Come on,
There
son.
you go.
That's a lot of firsts at NASCAR
Life
races.
experiences at NASCAR races.
Sure, yeah, and that's I want people to understand that like this is something that there's aspects of this that I think is cool, but it's one of those kind of factors where you're kind of like, this is amazing, like almost every other part of the time, but it does make you wonder, like, if something goes down, like I hope there's somebody keeping an eye on stuff if somebody decides to get crazy or if somebody's going off and fighting or anything like that.
There's more than you think. I'll
Yeah.
share a quick story.
There are a lot of
was-
volunteers that don't just look like security.
Right. Okay.
We were at the 600 and I think it may have been 2011, 2012, give or take. I've shared the story with you guys. I don't know if I've said it on the podcast. But one of the cables, the camera cables above the track, snapped. And that went over the crowd, over the fence, and onto the track. And around came Dale Jr. and Kyle Busch, and their cars got wrapped up, and it wrapped up in the tire well or the wheel well of the car, and it started violently shaking that fucking rope in the crowd. You could Google it. Just put like Coca-Cola 600 cable snap, and nobody died. But there were quite a few injuries. But I was very surprised at how much medical staff ended up being able to kind of come in and help out with those situations. But that was a big deal. And then away from security, Nick, we were talking about the TVs and stuff like that, accessibility. Because I'm always hesitant about going to road courses because I'm like, dude, I genuinely do not want to watch like. I'll see people be like, going to the F1 race, and they're like watching like one area as the car zips by. Genuinely the worst money to spend. Like, what are we doing? Like, just watch the race.
Well, especially considering the price, right?
Could not
Like
be that
going to
good,
see,
right?
yeah.
Right. But at Charlotte, you guys are going to notice there is a 80-foot by 200-foot flat screen TV right at where the backstretch hits into turn 3 that is showing. So it's one of the world's biggest flat screen TVs there at Charlotte. So that's going to be really cool. And I'm really excited for you guys to just have that. Again, we were talking a little bit before the pod about the experience pre-COVID to now, right? It used to be go in the garage, meet the drivers, meet the crews, almost in touching distance of these cars all the time, and in some tracks, if you can secure a NASCAR pass or something like that, there still is kind of that, but it's not as accessible since COVID. And then one thing I think you'll notice, Richmond kind of has it. They've got the sections, Nick, where you can kind of go. There's the merch haulers, and then there's a lot of Toyota stuff. They've got like iRacing rigs set up, and it's like come sim race, and come do all these other things. And they have all these like games and kind of like festivities things that you could do. Again, a lot of sponsors, a lot of promo stuff. But I mean, the 600, I'm excited to see what it's like, having not been there since 2012, 2013. But it used to be, it felt like college game day, dude. They used to do a broadcast. They would have DW and those guys out there, outside of the track at a little station. We're all cheering behind it like it's Georgia, Bama, college game day stuff, screaming. They're like, who's going to win today? And, of course, it was going to be like Jimmy Johnson or Casey Kane or the only other guys that could run fast at that damn track. But
Yeah.
like that was sick. The like Monster Energy girls and the Nextel Cup girls, they would all have a bunch of different things, and again a bunch of different. Back before sim racing was as accessible at iRacing, they would have a ton of them set up. I can't remember what they were running. It wasn't iRacing. It was like NASCAR Racing 2003 or something like that. You remember the old
Probably. Yeah.
sim game? But it's a big part of the year because NASCAR, almost all the teams and sponsors are kind of centralized in Charlotte, so it's going to be a good time. I'm really excited for us. As for the Coda race, I think he kind of hit the points right. Good bell run through at the end of that race. Kind of catching. He didn't get a chance to really catch him, so that sucks. But that was fun to watch. I felt like the racing was fine. SVG got his debut. He was racing fine. I think was bursting into like 9th or 8th and had speed. And then he lost first gear. I don't know if that was something made known to you guys throughout the race, but he lost first gear, and after that, that's what happens when you're racing a colleague prepped or trackhouse car or whatever. But
Yeah, McDowell looked good, very good
Really?
early,
Yeah.
and then he had a steering rack issue, and finished I think 8 laps down.
got you. But I felt like Coda, and the last thing we'll talk about before we hop into our power rankings.
We gonna touch Bristol at all?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Is Coda was a solid race, and Richmond was a solid race, but we've been spoiled with Atlanta and Bristol.
Yeah.
And Bristol was, I mean, if I would have told you that 5 cars finish on the lead lap in a Bristol race, you'd go, well, that was a snoozer.
You would think it was a snooze fest. Yeah.
Snoozer.
Yeah.
But no, Denny put on a masterclass of saving tire. Truex was it Truex right behind him? Masterclass. Those guys duking it out, trying to catch each other and maneuver through the traffic. The whole first part of that race is people are getting used to the fact that
It's just chaos.
the tires being worn. And I don't know if I've heard the discussions. Everybody that was like cranked to a 10. That was up to a 10. Normally it's at about a 2 for tire wear. We want it somewhere around 7. I feel like that's exhausted, but like, was there anything that you guys took away from that race outside of how do we replicate that down to a 7 at anywhere else? I felt it was solid. I mean, Alex Bowman got a top 5. I was obviously very happy with that.
Yeah, I loved the racing. I love anything that brings the driver more into it, and brings strategy and saving your stuff more into it. Not, I know a lot of people like to see the cars go 110%, the full length of the race, but that's not what a set distance race is. It's thinking about saving your stuff, thinking about when to be quick, and holding back, because a lot of guys can't really hold back. They just go the whole time.
Right.
I think you said it, bring the tire wear down just a hair, to where you don't have guys burning up a right front or a right rear and completely blowing them 50 laps into the race.
And Goodyear mounting like extra sets, like as you
having to go to the NASCAR hauler.
Again, it was bad because they didn't know, so they blew through 3 sets not knowing what was occurring or if that was going to change. They
raced like they were on the Atlanta tire.
I do think if we re-racked that race and said same tire, hopefully same situation, because it's not like this happened as far as I'm concerned, it wasn't any different of the tire they brought in the fall race last year. It's just it didn't take rubber. Right, Bristol didn't take rubber. Maybe it was the conditions. Remember, this was the first year not on dirt in a while. Maybe it was the fact that it wasn't.
They had that resin. They put resin down as well
on the first lane, but not the second lane. And
they went away from PJ1 and put resin down, which, like Brandon said, didn't take rubber. It just chopped up the tires.
Right.
Yeah.
Like there was a ton of rubber on the top of the racetrack that it just grinded the tires, and it didn't really mesh with the racetrack.
I'm afraid they fixed the tire, or they overcorrect on the tire a little bit, anticipating that, and then it takes rubber next time, and then it's a boring snooze fest race. Like I almost want to say, hey, just go back, same amount of tires, same situation. We're just going to see how it plays out, and then we will adjust tire next year, Bristol. That way, we have 2 races on the same compound, because if you go back to that race and you go, hey, guys, these tires, you're going to have to make them last about 120. They're not going to last.
It's also going to change between day race and night race.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Right. Because it was exactly. So I don't want them to change anything before the fall Bristol race. We had made a point. We talked about this, Nick, is since every track, and we talk a lot about track importance and whatever. I think any track that we're going to revisit later in the playoffs is immensely important because I want to see guys like balls to the wall, learn as much as you can in the first race, so you can apply that to the second race. And we haven't
Right,
gotten
fill
that
up the
with Bristol
notebook.
because of the dirt before. Like dirt is just
Yeah.
this outline. And then the first time we go to Bristol, everybody's really cautious because they have to learn. Felt like this time they were like, let's go learn about Bristol.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
So
Well, that's
yeah, I agree.
that's the important way to go. Is like I love that idea. I think that's absolutely perfect, especially for what we've already deemed in a previous episode this to be one of the more important stretches of the season because you're running Phoenix, because you're running Bristol, because you're running Richmond, because you're touching tracks that are going to get visited again towards the end of the season, because you're running Martinsville. Like you're going to be at tracks that you're going to see later. So this is the moment to take every last note that you had. This is just the first time in a few years that Bristol has been one where you're not throwing it out as soon as you finish up, and go in for the night race. So
Yeah, this
I,
this is the most important stretch of the schedule because I know that we've already talked about Jimmy a few times this podcast, but that's one of the things that got him 7 championships was Jimmy and Chad would get a safe point lead early or a safe bank up on points early, and then before the playoffs or before the chase at that point, they would throw whatever they could at the car and see what sticks. And then they would have that in their back pocket for when the chase started. And guys will do that today for when the playoff starts.
Yeah, it's important to have that kind of it adds so much more to the nuts and bolts of like what's actually happening in those team meeting rooms and those strategy points that it's important to have that, and I think it's cool. And I doing this for Bristol now and having 2 actual like real like similar races at Bristol is going to be important in this particular scenario. I don't want to see them change anything going into the next one, aside for maybe Goodyear has an extra set mounted beforehand.
That would be my thing. Let's
That's
go
about
back
it.
with the same tires, do the resin again.
Yeah.
One more set of tires with that compound
Give
because
me
that
2
pair
race
of set
sample
that they got
sizes.
were not the same, right?
Yeah.
So like I think you go back with the same, you just give them one more set, one more, so that it's just on backup, right? Because you don't want to have a situation where somebody can't finish because they have no tires.
Right.
So yeah, I loved that Bristol race was a 15 out of 10 for me. I mean, it was awesome to watch. And that was kind of my first experience as an NASCAR fan, seeing a race like that was where they were just driving the tires off of them. Like they were running flat. And I had never seen that before. But yeah, I would go back, do it exactly the same way. One more set. That would be my thing.
And we've got some interesting. The next 3 races coming up here are all going to be tracks that, well, not all. Talladega's Talladega, and I think we don't mind the super speedway package. But the next 2 races, we got Martinsville this weekend, and I don't know how we're gonna. That's been historically a snoozer on next gen. So if tires can change a lot about how that race goes, and then we got Texas, which
It's a
is
snoozer because of the shifting again.
right. And then Texas Motor Speedway, which is a track that just, since it's got restructured years ago, it just hasn't been successful at all, despite mile and a half's kind of seeing a resurgence lately. So I wonder if there's something tire-wise on that can help. Because if we had a Bristol-type tire fall off at Texas, multiple lanes, that could change that perspective and really put us in a good spot because we're getting to a really interesting part of NASCAR. If we could fix the short track package, road course racing is good because we have a ton of road course specialists that are full time, right? Reddick, McDowell, obviously SVG coming in, all the names that are coming over. If Ricky Stenhouse cannot wreck them for 10 laps, we could get some cool outside NASCAR names in these races. What was the other V8 supercar? Brody. He raced Indy.
Brody Kostecki.
Right. He looked pretty solid in the RCR prepped car last year. I'd like to see him come back. So it'll be interesting to see how those things go. But ultimately, an interesting stretch here as we enter the summer. We'll get Dover, which is probably going to get rained out. So if you guys are going to Dover this year, make sure your Monday's clear.
2 years in a row is enough to learn that lesson. We're good.
Absolutely not.
And then
Absolutely
May,
not.
we're going to get the best racing in the sport. We got Kansas, we got Darlington, we got the All-Star race in North Wilkesboro, and then we're going to end it off with Charlotte. we'll be back with the podcast after, I think, Dega, I think is
Yeah.
our scheduled thing. So
Yeah.
that'll be
That'll
exciting
be
to
the
kind of
next
look
cap.
at that. Obviously, in these last 3 races, Denny won 2 of them, right? He won Bristol. And
Well,
not
we
only
stole this one, but
we stole this one, but we didn't really get any new, outside of Denny, we didn't really get any new playoff drivers, right? We're still sitting at Byron, Larson, Suarez, Hamlin. Is that it? Byron, Larson,
Yeah,
Suarez,
and
Hamlin.
somehow still not
Won
Truex,
Atlanta.
but
Suarez won Atlanta. I'm tripping. I
Yeah.
really had the schedule.
Yeah.
Right
which
up
I
here.
mean
Bell,
by a
Bell won
hair.
Phoenix.
but-
Bell won Phoenix, and then
yeah.
Yeah.
so
Yes.
that's what we're
Bell
sitting
won
at on
Phoenix.
playoffs. So still a lot of playoff spots up to grabs. I
This
want
is a good lead in towards the power rankings, Finn. What do you think?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. A little segue
Weird.
action. So we'll do it this way.
Hey.
All 4 of us have given in our 10 list. Well thought out. Definitely not 20 minutes before the podcast. Everybody well thought out their top 10. And what I did is I went and averaged them together, and we're gonna present them here. So I'm gonna give our 3 honorable mentions. These are guys that did receive votes from us, but are outside of the top 10 in rankings. And then we'll go through and go 10, 9, 8, and we'll just kind of popcorn talk about. Maybe I'll call you out. Maybe you had this person higher or lower. I'll ask why. Or if it's your chance to talk about it, just talk about that season. So let's do honorable mentions. Coming in 13th is Chase Elliott. 2 people voted him in their top 10. That was Corey and Nick. They put them at 10th. But Chase Elliott did not get enough votes to make us a 13th. I feel like it's one of those, are you really high on Chase or low on Chase? Bubba Wallace comes in at 12th. Only 1 person had him in their list compared to 2. Really, but he was higher than Elliott in both of those. Somebody put him at 8th, Jeff. So a little Toyota bias for Bubba Wallace at 8th. I don't know.
Some
Well,
23
no,
11
hold
stuff.
on. I am happy to talk about that because I mean, like, cause I legitimately like went and wrote and erased like multiple times when trying to put this one together. And when I got down to those last 3, I was a little bit on the fence. But for me, the big thing about Bubba and including him there is just over the last couple of years, we've been able to say that, you know, hey, Bubba seems a little quick during this stretch, or he's like, oh, he looked good at this track and then looked bad at this track, or like something happened here, or he wrecked out. Like there was always kind of something. This year, thus far, he's been consistently quick.
Right.
And it's more so been eye test for that one more than anything else. And also there's certainly some recency bias in that with the way he was running with Larson through a lot of the race last night. So that was a big factor. But I would say like thus far, this has been one of the better starts to a season that I've seen from Bubba in a while. And I just, you know, I wanted to make sure I acknowledge that somewhere. So
Yeah.
that's where that one's coming from, is really like getting him in there to acknowledge the fact that like that team is starting to dial in and figure out what they're actually going to do this season. And he has the chance of being a little more of a force this year, I think.
And I'll be the other side of that coin. So he's 14th in points. He's got 2 top 5s, but those top 5s are his only top 10s as well. Like 20-ish stage points. So, I mean, I think it's more of the same Bubba that we've seen. Yes, he's calmed down a bit, and he's starting to get that consistency that he needs. I still think that he's too hard on himself. He tries to drive too hard a lot of the time, and he just needs to manage races better.
Yeah.
He also he oftentimes has good days and poor finishes.
He definitely got a primary assist last night.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Good days and poor finishes
One
is about as
primary
good of
assist
a
on his knock.
good days, poor finishes. I mean, yesterday he finished 15th, but he was running around, had some of the best speed. Qualified 6th at Coda, and I finished 7th. Or, sorry, I'm looking at Ross Chastain. Qualified high, top 10 at a road course, which he normally doesn't. And he has improved. I think the speed has been there. In fact, I would say Bubba Wallace has had race-winning speed at a couple of tracks this year.
He's
He's just not
finish.
finishing a race, and that's okay because Bowman, on the other hand, is finishing races extremely well. but doesn't have any race-winning speed. So
Right.
you have to play the coin. And this early in the year, I'm okay with Jeff overvaluing having race-winning pace, and just looking good eye test wise. So
I
I'll
included Bowman on mine, so of course I'm
we'll
going
get
to
to
do that.
Bowman. I'm going to start with I'll start with I'll go number 10. Oh, sorry. And then the next honorable mention, 11th, is Chris Buescher, who received 2 ninth place votes, one from me, one from you, Nick. So obviously Buescher, again, kind of a quiet season, sparked on the scene last year, winning 3 out of 5. This year, not really race winning pace, but he's kind of been consistent.
He's got 5 top 10s.
Right, extremely consistent.
He's been there every race.
Right, and I think he's kind of a threat at a lot of different style of tracks, right? So maybe not the road courses, but he's there. So I'll start.
Ask me in the summer about Busher. That's pretty much where I'm at with that.
And
well, last summer he had a stretch of 3.
Exactly.
3 wins.
I want to see if he can replicate. That's where I'm like on that fence, because I want to see if he can duplicate what he was doing last year and kind of roll that into something.
Yeah.
So, Jeff, we'll start with you. You're the only other person other than me that put this person in their top 10. Coming in at 10th is the one car, Ross Chastain. What led you to putting him in over some of the other guys?
It's one of those things where for Ross, he's one of these guys that I expect him to be in the mix in majority of the races that he runs. Like he's shown he's got the skills, he's shown that he's got the talent, and also ever since he's like taken some of the like more frustrating aspects out of his game to dial them back by like a notch or two, it's really, in my opinion, helped the way that he presents on the track and the way that he runs. I mean, he's got 4 top 10s.
Right.
He's got a few laps led. He's in the discussion throughout most of the time, and we're just at this early point in the season where that's one of those factors that you kind of throw out there is like, is this somebody that you're going into this race kind of being nervous about if he's going to come up on your driver and is he going to be able to get by him? And Ross is one of those guys, and I included him on this list because I think he's more than a wild card to me. So
I'll make a note here. From Atlanta to Bristol, he qualified 21st, 20th at Vegas, 12th at Phoenix, 36th at Bristol. In those races, he finished 7th, 4th, 6th, and 15th. He immensely improves throughout the weekend and throughout the race and finishes well. And that's why I think I will note this. 0 people had Daniel Suarez on their list, despite that being the one driver on the team that's playoff locked. And I think we're seeing that with Ross. No controversy so far this year, early in the year. But most importantly, he's turning days and cars into top 10.
It's also important to mention that yes, Daniel Suarez is locked in, but he was locked in at a plate track. That is a crapshoot. One of the best races in recent memory, but a crapshoot, and that's his only top 10 of the year. So,
yeah, out of the 2, that's the other thing. As far as that team is concerned, there is not much of a discussion between like who. If you were to go and just be like, all right, we're rolling into the playoffs tomorrow, and you get to choose which one of the Trackhouse guys you want running behind the wheel. I don't know how many people are actually picking Suarez unless it's like, yeah, we're running 3 road course races through these playoffs. Yeah, I don't know how many people are picking Suarez.
Chastain's the clear, number 1 driver of the team.
Bingo. Yeah, exactly.
I don't think he's personally up high enough to put into my top 10, but
right.
I can see a case for it.
You did have him at 11th, so and so did Corey, so right outside. So this next driver coming in at 9. 2 people voted him in. I voted him at 7th, and Corey voted him in at 9th, and you guys did not. That's Alex Bowman in the 48. Corey, gloat on this 48 a little bit. Why'd you put him in your top 10?
He's consistently there. It's really, with my thing with Bowman this year, it's more of an improvement factor than it is like a showing factor, right? It's like, for one, he's in a Hendrick car, right? So he's gonna have some speed. That's just kind of by default. But he has shown, I have seen from Alex Bowman that which he did not have in the past 2 years of my fanship, right? So he's just kind of there. He's got 3
Plenty of
top
room.
5s. He's led some laps here and there, not many, but he's led some laps. But it's really those
Quiet.
3 top 5s. He's qualified well. He's gotten a little bit unlucky here and there, but it's for me. This one kind of came down to like, okay, what do I want to do here in terms of Chastain or Bowman? That was kind of where I was going back and forth there. But yeah, I mean, Ross having 1 top 5 and Bowman having 3 was kind of what led me to that decision.
Yeah, and I
The
put
3
him
top
in
5s is strong 7 races in. I mean, that's strong.
right, and if he had not got caught a lap down, I think we were on our way to another top 10
Probably,
type
yeah, probably
situation. So it
4.
was
Yeah.
looking solid. But my issue is Alex Bowman outside of Coda. Coda seems to be the only track that he's got like locked in. There is not a track on the schedule that I go, Alex Bowman's going to be a contender. We go to Darlington, Eric Jones is going to contend. We go to Phoenix, it looks like Briscoe and Chastain are going to be guys that you need to worry about. You go to half the tracks, Kyle Larson, Richmond, Denny. But there's not anything that I look at and go, that's an Alex Bowman track. I'm ready to win that race. And even though he's good at Coda, there's better road course racers. So I'm really concerned about that. In a Hendrick car, you have to have like a track that you're like that guy on eventually.
Yeah.
So that's my
Right.
frustration there.
He was a fringe guy for me. I just don't think that the pace has been there. Like it's the opposite of a Bubba situation,
Right.
where he's pulled out these finishes, and I think that it's mostly been by strategy or
Right.
kind of falling into it.
Right. Bristol just
some
saving
places. So yeah,
tire, chilling. Coda he was quick at. I give him that. But yeah.
I mean he's only got 6 laps led for the year.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Let's go. Next in the 8th spot is 23 XI's Racing Tyler Reddick. The person that had him highest on the list was you, Nick, at 7. Why don't you break down Tyler Reddick for us?
So Reddick, he's got a DNF on the year, and he's still top 10 in points. He's had the speed historically. He's one of the best, wheelmen out there, akin to Larson. I just feel like early in the year he's a sleeper, and he's going to come alive. My ranking is more on his potential. And that one DNF has really made him kind of non-existent early, while he's still got 4 top 10s. So he hasn't not been fast. I just think he's got a lot more in the tank.
Tyler Reddick is, and I mean this in the absolute best way possible, a gigantic pain in the ass. For other
100%.
drivers on the track, especially like at this stage in this juncture of the year, that's what he ends up being for so many people. You can just tell that a lot of guys are out there on a regular basis like, God damn, where'd that 45 come from? Again, he just gets there. He's battling with somebody. He's up in the mix. He's driving you crazy because you can't get away from him, or he's right there on your, he's right there on your tail. He's just one of those kind of guys, and it pays off for him down towards the stretch and the end of the year.
And we were talking about specialties. I mean, I think aside from like the SVG, I think Reddick generally might be the best road course racer on the circuit right now. I think he's kind of got something figured out with next gen.
Him and Bell.
Right.
Him and Bell.
And then the mile and a halfs, I mean, he's up there with Larson in terms of the best at that. So we're hitting a stretch with Darlington, Kansas, the 600, Chicago coming up, where Tyler Reddick's going to be a real problem. And I think everybody's expecting him to have a win or two before the summer's complete. He's the first driver on the list at number 8 where all of us voted him into our top 10. I had him the lowest at 10th. Nick had him the highest at 7th. So next, I would go to you, Jeff, but I'm going to skip you so you could do number 6. We're going to go to Corey here. Number 7 is Ryan Blaney. He has 3 votes in the top 10. Can you guess who didn't put him in the top 10?
Brandon Finley.
I'll explain why, but you go ahead. You voted him in at 7th, and then Jeff did too, and then Nick had him at 8th. So 7 seems to be the wheelhouse for him. Talk about your experience with Ryan Blaney.
Blaney continues to be the flagship Ford car. I mean, and it's really not even close at this point. He's the only Ford in the top 10 in points. Next on that list is Buescher in 12th. What am I seeing here? Where is old Mr. Blaney? Right now he's sitting at 5th in points. He's got 3 top 5s. He's got 3 top 10s. He's led 57 laps. He's got a stage win. He's just doing Ryan Blaney things. Oh, by the way, he's got 1 DNF and he's in 5th place in points. So, yeah,
And the next best on his team is 19th in
Right.
Joey Logano.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I will never ever defend for not happening towards Ryan Blaney. Upon my entry into the sport, I will forever be mad at you for that, my friend. But no, it's been the story, right? It was always what I said about Blaney before he won his championship. He's just always there. You can't get rid of him. It's just like, no matter what happens, somehow Ryan Blaney is going to pop into the top 5 at some point in the race and run around there for a while, start causing a bunch of problems. He's a fraction of an inch away from having a win in Atlanta. He was leading that race on the last lap. Suarez got a run on him at the end, and he lost the race by 3/1000ths of a second. So, for all intents and purposes, that win could have belonged to either Suarez or Blaney. And if Blaney got a win, he would immediately have to be in your top 10, Finn, because you wouldn't be able to then exclude him at this point.
Well, none of us put Daniel Suarez, the winner of that race, in their top 10.
I grant you, but like that's my point though. Is like he's 3/1000ths of a second away from a at-large bid into the top 10. You would have had no way to say that he's not. And like I know that that's kind of an ongoing thing here, but I mean, he's 5th in points, dude. What are we talking about?
It's a bit of a meme. I will say this. I did my power rankings initially prior to Richmond. I did them the Monday after Coda. And
one second.
Florida. And I put Blaney, I had Blaney sitting around 6th. At the time, him and Bowman were tied for top 5s on the circuit. He had just come off of 2nd, 3rd, and 5th at Atlanta, Vegas, and Phoenix, and then Bowman had his top 5s. And it obviously in a year where Ford is kind of something's up or coming off of a year, but I always look at Blaney and I go, man, he's what Byron was 2 years ago, which is like, oh, he's good for a win a season. He's got speed, but can he just finish it? And I think he's just as capable. And for somebody who's a metalhead and a childhood Jimmy Johnson fan, that's Ryan Blaney. You would think I would also be a huge Ryan Blaney fan. I had nothing against Ryan Blaney. I just thought I thought it was very
exactly
interesting.
Like William Byron, except he has a championship.
Yeah. Okay. So
he shouldn't have a championship.
He shouldn't have a championship at all. That's nonsense. Byron is last year's champion, as far as I'm concerned. So, Nick, just to get you in on what's going on, I had no issues on Ryan Blaney. I don't really even hate the Penske guys like that.
I like Ryan Blaney.
Right.
He just shouldn't have a championship.
When I brought Corey into the sport, and we brought Corey into sport, obviously, and I want to say this again, I value this because I hate the old-timey thoughts on NASCAR, right? We get so caught up in old thoughts and ways and viewpoints. Corey's perspective to the sport was extremely fresh. And, for example, we're over here preaching Kyle Larson is the best. He's the best. And he's like, Kyle Larson's not winning races, dude. He's like, you guys keep telling me about this Kyle Larson. I could tell he's quick, but like, is he really the star of the sport? And of course, now he has found out, oh, that's what that's like. This guy's disgusting, annoyingly disgusting.
He's just there.
But one of his viewpoints was like, hey, this Ryan Blaney guy, not last season, but it was the year before. Like, hey, this Ryan Blaney guy's quick. And yes, granted, just like how Byron's annoying everybody last year with how many races he was winning and how many laps he was leading, that was Blaney for a good chunk of that season. And for us and me and Jeff and just in general, I was just like, listen, Ryan's got a lot of potential, but he's not there yet. He's not there yet. And yes, Corey gets the victory lap parade this championship round, but you remember when he killed that cat? Oh, I had that on here like constantly, dude.
I came into the sport.
I knew the cat was coming in here at some point. It always does.
18 months, he was a champion.
I had the funniest photo to show you that I photoshopped after he won the championship. I'll show you afterwards. But yeah, it's ridiculous. So, but my point is, I moved him off as the only person that didn't have him on. He finished 16th, 12th, and 19th the last 3 races, and I felt like he's on the back trend, and that's all it was for me. It was more of a reactive. He's on the back trend. He's not winning races. He's not being competitive in races. And I just felt like
So I didn't know that this was a last 3 race power
No, it
ranking.
wasn't.
no, it's whatever you want. But I just felt like, again, I mentally I tend to scrap the first 2 races, the super speedway races. I really don't hold those a lot. I don't hurt guys for being 30th, and I also don't hurt guys for being top 5. Like I just kind of go, all right, they existed, whatever. Or I look
I
at all
can
the
see
other
that viewpoint.
races, and he was fine, but I just don't feel like Ryan Blaney is currently a threat. He was extremely slow yesterday. I don't know what was going on with Ryan Blaney. Extremely slow.
He's very streaky, I feel like.
So he's on the downswing of the streak. So I figured if
Well,
anyone,
that's
because I'm
kinda-
gonna
that's
eventually gonna have to put him in there.
Freakiness
going
is a
forward.
recent thing, though. After he won a championship last year. Sorry, I couldn't get that one out.
It's the lamest thing ever, dude. Congrats, you're fast at Phoenix. Like, okay.
Yeah, be good at Phoenix.
Be good at Phoenix. You're the NASCAR, champion.
He is.
All right, so
Yeah.
hitting just outside the top 5. Everybody except Corey had this driver in the top 5. He appeared as high as 3rd on my list. But Jeff is going to break it down. Is this the first Toyota on the list? No, second Toyota on the list. Ty Gibbs, shocker, at the 6th spot. Let's talk about Ty Gibbs, Jeff. What do you think?
I mean, first off, 3 top 5s.
Yeah.
Which 5 top 10s. Just like, he's coming up on a couple hundred laps led. He's not quite there. The development factor is one of the big ones because, my God, when was the last time we saw a guy that has developed and stepped into a role as quickly and comfortably as Ty Gibbs has? It's been a good while since we've seen something like, we've seen young drivers come in, and make a splash. We've seen, other factors happen. Like, Ty Gibbs has thus far, been as advertised in so many different ways, coming up here. Because you look at his performance in Xfinity, he was fantastic. Like, he ran through, won his championship, was just the, full hotshot driver. Like, he got to a point coming through there and then coming into the series that he's making enough of a statement that, you can make the Nepo Baby comments and stuff all you want, but he's still likely going to be faster than you on Sunday. So that's another factor. But as far as this season goes, 3 top 5s was a big factor for me. The large number of laps led was a big factor for me. Stage wins was another. He's got the numbers to back it up. Just also, he's been a thorn in the side of multiple people throughout the top 5 throughout the year. He's just quick. Right. The guy deserves some due for, the way that he's running this season thus far.
He's also good at so many styles of tracks. He's got great road course skills.
He's a great road course.
Qualified second, finished 3rd at that race. I don't know if he's going to win one, but again, in terms of road courses specifically.
Yeah.
He's
sure.
good. From the time back.
He's one of.
Yeah. What's up?
I'm sorry. He's one of only 3 drivers with multiple stage wins.
Right. 4th in points. Been consistent. Fast at Vegas. Fast at Phoenix. Qualified second. We just talked about where you're supposed to be good at is Phoenix.
Right.
We
Almost
know
won
the
stage
Toyotas
one
kill
by
it.
a lap or 2.
Right.
Just missed winning stage 1 at Phoenix.
Right. We know the Toyotas are bad fast at Kansas, and I'm expecting him to win. And if you look back to the Clash, where he led a ton of laps at that Clash. There's something about the short track package. So I think he might be a dark horse for the Martinsville win. Here coming up this weekend. So
I don't think he's a dark horse. I don't think he's a dark horse, man.
Right.
Yeah, I have him P4 in my
one.
list. So
Right. He's 3 in mine. I genuinely have been extremely impressed.
Yeah.
And I hate the guy.
With his speed. Yeah. Obviously I think
I'm not
I've
a Ty
softened
Gibbs
on him.
fan.
I think he's handled his adversity with losing his father and then his dog immediately right after that. I kind of softened up for him. And he hasn't really been the same Ty Gibbs.
He's calmed down a lot
in the realm, and I can live with that. I can live with that. I can give drivers some second chances. So that's Ty Gibbs. Let's get to the top 5 here. I'm gonna save one of mine here. We'll go back to you, Nick. You had this driver as high as 3rd on your list. That's Martin Truex Jr. MTJ, sitting in the 5 spot. Talk about him.
I'm surprised he averaged out at 5. Points leader. Very fast. Look at last night. He should have won that race. gotten it stolen from him. 352 laps led. He has the second most laps led in the sport. 5 top tens, a stage win. He's always there. He's got 68 stage points. That's the second most out of all drivers. So I was going between second and third on my list. I ultimately put him at third because it's just that finishing aspect that he's missing right now. And he hasn't, he's shown in the past that he can go on very hot streaks and win a ton of races. It's just been a while since that happened. But he's very consistent for the first part of this season.
Yep, Truex was a
It's
driver.
vintage Truex.
Cooled off at the end of last year too. He was on a real heater and just cooled off in the playoffs last year. He's doing better now than he did at the end of last year for sure.
Right, and back to that experience that Corey had when he first got into sport, that was Truex's winless season, right? And so we're over here talking about, hey, there's this guy, when he wins, it's boring. Like, Truex doesn't win races. Truex,
he dominates.
Curb stomps you and leads the whole damn thing. And we see the shades of that, right? But yeah, it hasn't quite come on. And I will say this, he's a driver I didn't move up after this past week's race, but in theory, he probably could have been a smidge higher. I just think that outside of Bristol, where Denny kind of had that one, and that was chaos, and yes, he probably deserved the win at Richmond. You're right. I just don't think he's been like the fastest car at the track, but he has been one of the faster guys. Again, 7th. He's on a 5 top 10s in a row streak with 2 7th place finishes and 2 top 5s at Bristol and Richmond. I think he's an easy, up the board if he can secure a win. Kind of takes the pressure off of himself, gets some boring wins in that regard. But I'm the one who had him lowest at 6th. Corey had him at 5th, and then if you guys obviously a little high on him. Obviously,
I had him at 2.
Yeah. So I got a lot of respect for him, TJ. He shoots up my list if he starts becoming the killer instinct that we've seen. And granted, he should have. Denny cheated. Speaking of Denny, he comes in at 4. He wins last night, wins 2 of the last 3. Surprised that he's only at 4. I think everybody kind of realizes. Actually, Jeff, why do you think he's at 4? Because you didn't even put him in the top 3 considering, well, you had him at 3rd. Talk about your guy, and why do you think maybe not top 2 considering 2 wins?
Well, I mean, for one, that's the thing. I'm the lone Denny guy here, but I haven't denied any of the allegations from last night. I have no aspects of that. Yes, again, I was going bonkers last night watching him move through that entire field. I was ecstatic about the way that he was running. He was showing exactly why he is the man that he is in, getting through the field last night. And he was running, and I still contend that if the race was 10 laps longer, I don't think we're talking about cheating. I think it comes down to him in a shootout with either Truex or Larson at the end of that race. If the chance would have really come up, but he ended up kind of running out of race, and the caution, really saved a lot, and his pit stop saved that. For me, it's like I'm hard on Denny, and I'm hard on Denny for a reason. Because.
I was gonna say,
but no, I mean that's genuinely I am rough on the guy specifically because I want to see you follow through. You've got so many wins. You have shown you are a surefire first ballot Hall of Famer. You have shown that you are one of the greats for this sport. You have shown that you can fill every single, shoe that you can, except getting the ring at the end of the season. It comes down to, for me, just deliver, get there, make Denny delivers a thing again, do this. I genuinely, the smoke and mirrors that can come up from, a few different wins and this and that, it doesn't get me anymore. It's I need you to continuously be the great driver that you're supposed to be, and not just, snag this, this, incidental type win like you got last night. I need you to go out there and win races by a whole lap. I need you to get out there and go be 5 seconds ahead of the guy behind you because you have the fucking talent for it. Right. So that's the, I'm intentionally I am not the rah-rah, he's my number one big, guy for that very reason. It's like, come on, man. Like, you deserve to be up here. Show me that you deserve to be up there and race like you deserve to be up there.
Right.
But yeah, that's why he's not number one for me, because he has not been better than Larson and Truex. He just has not. Those two, to me, have been the standout shining stars of the NASCAR Cup Series season thus far.
Right. I think 2 wins can't be ignored by any means, and only only one of us had Denny outside of the top 4. That was Nick at 6. But I think the issue is Denny is those guy that knows those tracks. When it's a Denny track, it's a Denny track. Watch out. Problem is at the non-Denny tracks, he isn't quite as competitive as we're used to seeing him be.
He's a midfield guy.
It's really like, ooh.
He's got his special tracks that he's consistently fast at, and where he's
Richmond
fast,
and
he's
Pocono and Bristol.
very fast. He's also been, fast at Darlington. And I have him at 6 on my list. A little bit of that is bias because I don't like Denny Hamlin, but I would contend that he's one of the best to ever do it that doesn't have a championship.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if we were still on the chase format, that he would have a championship by now.
Probably close, yeah.
But
he's not good at Phoenix. Phoenix isn't a Denny track, and that's our
right.
problem.
He's not good at Phoenix. He's not good at a decent number of tracks.
Mm-hmm.
And you're seeing more and more today that, a lot of the top guys are good at most tracks. And for Denny, that's just not the case. He has his special tracks, and then the ones that he's not good at, he's a midfield guy at best. And the same equipment as his teammates who are consistently fast, like Christopher Bell, like Martin Truex, guys like that.
That's one of the big factors too. I mean, because I would also contend with that he's had plenty of his own pit lane difficulties, whether it's his own decisions of not being able to, not speed through pit lane and costing him races, even at some of the tracks that he's been good at, or his team, messing this or missing that and causing problems here and there. He's had his woes with that, but at the same time, all the credit in the world needs to go to that team for last night, because Corey made the point. That pit stop at the very end was one of the things that absolutely, we wouldn't be talking about that, restart if it wasn't for that pit stop there. So, the team deserves the credit for that one. But yeah, I mean, he's definitely I've said this on many occasions. Like, I love the guy. He will be my driver until he retires. He is my favorite. I've been rooting for the guy since 2007. So he is my favorite driver and will continue to be. But I've also said for a very long time, I understand why people don't like him. And if I haven't been a Denny fan for this long, I may not have the same feelings about the guy that, I understand why people have this sentiment about him that that they do.
Yeah,
I've just learned to love those things,
Every Denny fan now says, "Oh, that's just Denny being Denny." Right? But every non-Denny fan says, "Oh, well, that's just Denny being a douche."
Yeah. Sure.
So-
Because that's the thing is I get it. I understand some of the mannerisms, some of the ways he talks about some of the things, some of the approaches that he takes to some things. It can be abrasive,
Don't get me wrong.
To put it kindly, but
I love that we have a heel in NASCAR. Every good sport needs, a heel or two.
Yeah.
It's just he's the heel, so I don't like him.
That's also what the other thing with that is recent may not be the word, but if you look at early Denny, if you look at the way that he ran, even in the earlier parts of his career, through those first few years, or probably through the middle of his career, he didn't quite have that. He wasn't quite out of his shell in the same way that he is now. And
he didn't have
at
that
this
X
point,
factor.
you've mentioned the heel, right? You mentioned the heel factor. The other thing that's important, in order to be a good heel, you have to know you're the heel and you have to embrace being the heel. And that's something he's done well. And in a sport that has had personality problems for years, there's a refreshing piece to that. It's nice.
No, you want to know why
I
Kyle
agree.
Busch is a good heel? Because he wins championships. That's why Kyle Busch is a good heel. Because he's
can't
one of
be
the only
denied.
multi-time Cup champions. Why is Joey Logano a good heel? I do not believe quite yet that Denny is a heel, because Denny has too much of because he's not in the club mentality, it's too hard to be like, or it's too easy for everybody to be like, who are you? You're like, you know what I'm saying? Like, people, like, you get frustrated at Kyle. What can you say to Kyle Busch? He's a 2-time champion. He's got a metric, like 200 wins across all 3 series.
Another difference between Bush and Denny is I feel like Denny, while he tries to be the heel nowadays, I feel like he wants a lot more people to like him. Like, he thinks that most people should like him.
Right.
Kyle Busch does not care
So
at all.
Denny is
Well-
something. I just don't know if I'm ready to call him a heel. But
let's also
we've given
let's
15
let's
minutes
not
to
ignore
Denny
the
here.
fact that like Kyle Busch is not like he has softened a lot of the edges that like this is not the same Kyle Busch that was
also an
I'm just here so I
RCR.
don't get fined.
Kyle Busch got 0 votes on any of our lists tonight. He's a non-factor right now. Today, he's a non-factor this year.
Well, we just
Well,
haven't
I mean,
eliminated
thus
him.
far,
Not worth
yeah,
talking
sure.
about. I get that that's a new perspective, but this year he's not even worth talking about.
Right. I mean, he'll get there,
Yeah.
I think. But there's a team that's struggling to find speed. They keep giving Austin Dillon cars for some reason. They need to just go to a 1-car team, and if they want to be serious about winning, so
Sure.
just waiting for them to sell their team to somebody else, Trackhouse or something.
Anybody else.
Yeah.
Give it to Rick Ware.
Yeah, tell me about it. I mean, Justin Haley seems to be driving better
Yes.
than a good chunk of the field, and that was something we talked about at the beginning of the year. Giving up the colleague spot, everybody was like, "You're crazy." And then what do I keep seeing? The Walmart 51 in the top 15. I don't know where exactly.
Zane Smith.
I don't know
another
exactly
guy
where
that
he's
could-
finishing. Let me look at just real quick. I know this is the Justin Haley at 1, April Fools. But no top 10s again, and not in the greatest. So the finish column isn't there, but I mean, we're talking about a guy that's qualifying in the 30s every week. Like 1 week he qualified 13th at Coda. Every other week he started in the 30s, and he's finished.
Well, you got to look at
17th,
his equipment
early
too.
20
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, like he's out driving the shit out of that. Whereas Corey LaJoy was hyped as Spire's got all this stuff. They've got money this year. They're a real team. You're back there racing
Right.
Justin Haley still. So, on to number 3 in the last Toyota on the list. I will do this one.
Hold on. You
What's
missed one.
What's up? No, 4 was
Didn't we-
Denny.
Oh, number 4. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
My bad.
So number 3.
So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4.
The last Toyota on the list, everybody had him in their top 5. I had him the highest. I put him at 2, and that's Chris Bell. And I think when I look at guys that genuinely have everything, finishing, speed, they're making good decisions. Like again, Bell. All right, you look at the strategy that won last night, or had somebody ready to win last night. Denny, who had the fastest before the last caution? Who had the fastest car within a second of the lead last night with 10-ish laps to go, and that was Denny Hamlin. That strategy was perfect. Bell had a faster car than Hamlin last night and was on that same strategy. He just screwed himself because he sped on pit road. Does that he had to take ownership of that in the power rankings? Yes, I get it. But you look at the strategy call in Coda, and he's flying through the field. And they're able to take, and I like a team that's able to take those risks because they went and they dominated and looked really good at Phoenix. Bell's good everywhere. We're going to Martinsville, a track that he's extremely good at. We've talked. I get that this is power rankings for this year, but last 2 championship races, this dude was, for all intents and purposes, like had it locked up. He's so fast at Phoenix. He won Phoenix this year. I think Bell is a very, very clear championship favorite, the clear top Toyota at the moment. I think we all agree. Everything here says that we agree. Maybe some love for Denny from like Corey had Denny as high as 2 because of the double wins. But I just think of, if I had to put money on anybody not named William Byron to win a race this week, it would be Christopher Bell. Not this specifically, but any week, it'd be Chris Bell. So any thoughts? I mean, I think everybody's in agreement that Chris Bell top Toyota, or at least
He's definitely
top 3
he's
car.
definitely the top Toyota. I don't think. I mean, I get the hyperbole. I don't think that it's either Willie B or Christopher Bell. I think there's another guy that's going to be in the top 2 on the power rankings.
Who I didn't
that-
even have in the top 4.
Well, I mean,
but-
true. Like, I don't know. I guess maybe I overvalued Truex as a Toyota perspective on the top two factor, I guess. But yeah, that's
I
Again,
feel like
Toyota perspective.
it's Christopher Bell mainly on talent as the
Sure.
number one Toyota driver. Truex is a close second this year. But
Right.
just for me, Christopher Bell has looked better.
right. I think
I
Bell-
think
yeah.
I think Denny has shown that he has a million ways to win a race,
Mhm.
and I have yet to see that from Chris Bell. I think his wins are like it's dominant or it's not a win. Denny finds ways to sneak wins, and I haven't seen that from Christopher Bell. That's kind of how you used to describe. Who did you used to describe like
It was
that? Finn?
Byron last year. I was very hesitant to
Like,
move Byron up my list because I was
sneaking
like,
wins.
he
Right.
keeps sneaking wins. And granted,
Right.
I don't think for example, last night you could
But
say
last year he snuck like 8 wins.
Right.
like,
Well, right,
like,
and Byron
I
also
was-
well,
won a lot of races with clean air.
I changed my
know.
tune for the beginning of the
Yeah.
year. It was like Byron was fast, would lose speed,
Sure.
and then a late race caution would occur, and then he won the restart, and that's fine and dandy. But like I
haven't
was like,
seen
you
that
need to
from Bell,
dominate
though.
a race. Now Byron's dominating races. Hamlin,
Sure.
yeah, you're right. But I see even last night, I don't consider that a cheap win. Yes, the restart was kind of cheap, whatever. But again, fastest car on the track within a second of the lead with about 5 laps to go. For all
Sure.
intents and purposes, I look at that as a good win. With again, the fact that he was able to take a car and win the race, and if the caution didn't happen, at least put himself in position to win the race with
Right.
a 7th place car.
Yeah.
I mean, even look at Logano, who finished second
Yeah.
in that race and was second on the restart, was trying to chase him down. That was a top. I don't know if that was a top 10 car. Bubba
Yeah.
was out, Bowman was out, Barry was out. Like those were the top 5 cars. But here we go, Logano. So Hamlin's
Bell
just
has
kinda,
the X factor of being awesome at Phoenix.
right,
Like
awesome
Bell
Phoenix,
is
and
Bell.
also wins
Christopher
everywhere.
Bell should have 2 championships
I agree.
right now today.
Bell
he
also
should
is
have
great at
beaten
short
Wayne.
tracks. Bell
Like,
is
and then he
great at
had
mile and a
brake
half.
blow up.
He's great on dirt, which we don't go to anymore, but he's
Sure.
won on dirt.
Right.
And he's won, the
Yeah.
only thing Bell's just not very good at is super speedways.
Right. Bell, I think so. I think of Bell in the same aspect as I think of Reddick, and
Right.
almost to the same level as Larson.
I think in that it's Larson, and then those two pick which one on any given day.
Right. Just Bell doesn't have the experience that the other two have.
Right.
And once that experience comes and he's been in more of those situations and he knows just how to get into those positions that the other guys can get into and finish those races, then he's going to be a force to be reckoned with. I mean, he's already a force to be reckoned with at a lot of the places that we go to. He's just missing a little bit of that experience factor.
Gotcha. Yeah, I agree. And we'll move on to our final 2 Hendrick boys. Going into the year, Corey was very concerned that Chevrolet not making any changes to their car was going to be to their detriment. Well, we've got William Byron at 2 here.
What was I wrong?
Corey, I'm going to send it to you. What are your thoughts on Willie B this year? I mean, we all agree that he was pretty much the champion caliber driver last year. Are you seeing
Sure.
that this year? What are your thoughts on Willie B?
I mean, I think he's a guy who can win every single race, and no one would be surprised. Every track, every day, anytime, day, night, doesn't matter. Road course doesn't matter. Short track, plate track, whatever.
Right.
He can win anything, anytime.
Jeez.
And
Go ahead.
this specifically this year, he's got his Daytona 500 win, which I get as a plate track, and we kind of, regardless of what I might think about it, kind of it has a certain stigma. Okay. And then I kind of give that same stigma to the Coda race and the way all of that went this year. He dominated that race. Bell was catching him at the end, but it's still kind of like you can kind of circumstance your way to a win at Coda, maybe in a different way than you can at some of the other road courses. But I mean, the dude just like that's why I was annoyed after Coda, because it's just like, oh well, ho hum, William Byron wins another race. It's like, okay, well, whatever. Like it's just never a surprise.
2 Hendrick guys here in the pod with us today, me and Nick. If you would have told us 2-3 years ago that people would be so tired of William Byron winning races, we'd be like, what are you talking about? He's the third
Right.
best guy by a mile.
Right. It
On
was
this
Chase
team.
Elliott and Kyle Larson.
Right. His breakout because remember the year before you got into NASCAR racing, Larson won 10 races, right?
Right.
He won 10. And then
Right.
Elliott was competitive that year, won a couple, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And the year before that, Elliott was the champion and
Yep.
was winning every road course. Was who's
And
going to finish
dominated,
behind
yeah.
Elliott, right? So now we're this Byron breakout is crazy. I get it, but I don't care. Like at this point, I'm just happy to see another guy break out,
Yeah.
especially in such a historic ride, right? The 24 numbers, it's cool for me. He did have a lull. 17th at Atlanta, 10th at Vegas is again not for the guy that I voted number 1. 18th at Phoenix.
Vegas, he got
Right.
screwed by a trash bag.
Right.
He was
Yeah, he did.
He was crazy. He was going to win Vegas until the world's largest debris landed on the front of his car.
This is what
And
I see.
stuck.
They are
Yes.
offloading so fast. 4th in
Yeah.
qualifying, 5th at Phoenix, 8th at Bristol, 1st at Coda, dominated Coda. Nobody had shit for him. Not a single time did I ever feel like he was in danger of losing. I mean, seriously.
If there were no stages at Coda, he would have led every lap.
Yeah. Bell having to like throw some crazy strategy in the mix to even remotely catch him is kind of what sold it. Obviously, Daytona's Daytona. He won that race, big race. While the finishes haven't looked amazing, I'm willing to overlook that for how good he was doing, and that's why I put him at 1. I just felt like every
I
week,
put him at 6.
Yeah, interesting considering 2 wins.
I didn't have him very high because what have you shown me lately, man? I mean, yeah, you had Coda and like that was a great run, but other than that, it's like you had Daytona. Where were you last night, bro?
Are you doing
Like,
bits right now?
I mean, last night he
No.
was 7th.
You have
That's
Byron in
yeah.
6th?
it's a decent
Yeah,
day.
I didn't want to throw him on the bus, but he had Byron at 6.
His-
It went first. For
I
me,
don't
His
Nick,
only-
care.
3rd for Corey.
His only outlier is Bristol, really, where he junked his race car.
right.
Right.
I
I
mean-
I don't know, man.
Yeah,
Like,
three wins
there's a
right
good
now.
chance that changes for me in the summer. It's just like, as of right now,
That is-
maybe our next power ranking that looks a little bit different, but like,
That's why we.
I don't know.
I got
Like,
Denny at 2. Jeff's got Willie P at 6.
See, my Blaney thing isn't even looking that bad anymore. Okay, Jesus.
no,
See, I
it's-
had Denny at like 6.
that's fine. I get
Yeah,
it. I mean, this is that part of the season for, and maybe it's just a conditioning piece because a lot of his wins, particularly last year, were like, and Byron gets out into clean air, and Byron is half a track ahead of everybody else that he goes.
Bro,
So, like, I'm looking at it from that perspective, I guess, compared to, you know,
You're
some of the
expecting the
other
same.
runs that he's making
dude,
from
he
this
said,
year.
"What has he done for me lately?" He had a dominating victory 8 days ago.
Yeah, man. It's been over a week, dog. No,
Yeah,
I'm just
but did he
kidding.
jump the Geico
It's like
restart
that.
zone?
Yeah,
last
go to
night?
Daytona.
Right?
Like,
Did he steal something?
All right. Well, now I
Yeah.
have to answer for my crimes.
Drive it like you
because
stole it, man.
Number 1 on the list is shocked to, I guess, everybody but me. I don't know how I would phrase that, but I was shocked that he was this high on everybody's list. Kyle Larson comes in number 1 for Corey, number 1 for Jeff, number 2 for Nick. I had him at 5.
Well, you're high too, bro. I don't know what
Yeah.
to tell you about that.
And I obviously hold no anti-Hendrick bias. And if you think about it, that's the 48 crew for all intents and purposes. So why is he not there? Well, I just feel like I mean, if you look at it stats wise, he's just like taking weeks off, right? It's like 32nd at Atlanta, wins Vegas. A mad day at Phoenix, top 5 at Bristol on the strategy. It all depends on how you view that top 5. If you view it as he wasn't very quick at Bristol. He wasn't really anywhere up front, as far as I recall. And then, met at Coda despite winning the Cup race or the Xfinity race.
Well,
thanks to some.
He wasn't meh at Coda. He had speed at Coda. He got dumped at Coda.
Is that what happened? Yeah.
and then had bad strategy
So-
because he got dumped.
And then he looked good yesterday. I do admit he looked really good yesterday, and he's always pretty solid at Richmond. He won one of the race. I think we went last year, right? One of the Richmond race we went to last year. I just don't
Yes.
feel at the moment we have hit the Larson tracks. So the mere fact that he's got a win, he's got some top 5s, and then he's outside the top 10. I just didn't feel like that was quite their number 1 territory. I put him top 5 off potential, the fact that he's got a dominant win and he looked good last night. But I just
He's
don't
got the
feel-
most stage wins in the series, and he's got the most laps led.
Right.
in the
When
series.
he wins, he's dominant. He leads a shit ton of laps. That really was the case. You know what I'm saying? Richmond, he led a
But
shit
he's
ton
got
of laps.
less wins than Denny and Byron, and he's led more laps and won more stages.
Only one win, 3 top 5s.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I
3
mean, he's
stage
been
wins.
solid. I have him at 5th,
Yeah.
but I just don't feel like he's been better than Byron. I don't feel like he's been better than Bell at those tracks or across the season so far. I think we're hitting the Kyle Larson. Everything's.
Stretch.
I mean, he's about to win the All-Star race again. He's about to win the 600. About to do the double. Everything's about to be
The
Larson.
short track stretch and the 1.5-mile stretch.
Right.
Yeah.
So he's a clear jumper on my list. Him and Truex are clear jumpers on my list, but I'm just not quite ready. For me, eye test wise, my top 3 was Byron, Bell, and Gibbs. I feel like right now, those 3, every single week, I'm seeing the most speed out of. I'm like, holy shit, these guys are going to win. Now, are they winning the race necessarily? No, across the 3 of them, they only have 3 wins. But, I mean, that's who I see that's got speed when Jeff mentioned it earlier, eye test. So I think, again, pressure on me. I mean, Jeff had Byron at 6. Shit on him. I don't know what you're talking about.
No,
I was
Leave
going to
me
say,
alone,
I
leave me
could
alone.
put him at 6 if you could put Larson down there at 5. So,
I
we'll,
think-
you know,
right. I mean, those two
call it
things to
even,
me are
pal.
pretty equally silly behavior. I had Larson 1 and Byron 2. Or no, I'm sorry, I had Larson 1, Denny 2, Byron 3.
Yeah, I was going back and forth between Willie B and Larson. I probably should have put Larson at 1. It's just William Byron when he wins, he dominates. So
Right.
And I got a hard time. When we did this for the first time last year, I was catching flack because I was like, yo, William Byron's got to be number 1. He's got more wins than everybody else. And it's like, oh, no,
It's how
there's
you
more
win.
to it than that. Don't be silly. Blah,
It's
blah.
how
And
you
now it's
win.
like, okay,
It's-
now I do the reverse. I do the thing that you said. And you're like, no, that's silly. Larson should be number 5.
I
Byron
didn't
should be
say you
number-
guys were wrong. I just said I'm not quite
you
valuing
did though.
those situations. I didn't say you were wrong. I just said
I'm trying to grow here.
I'm the outlier. For me, I think, again, it all depends on how you view it. Some people are like, did you win? Shut up. Did he win? Yes or no? Shut up. And for that, okay, cool. You know what I'm saying? Justin Haley's in your top 50 drivers of all time because he won a Daytona race. Like, you know what I'm saying? Trevor Bayne won a Daytona 500. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's context behind every win. I mean, hell, look at, Kyle Larson's win at COTA in the Xfinity race. Who dominated the race? Who's the best driver that weekend? It was SVG, but
Yeah.
some nonsense occurred.
SVG had a penalty.
The penalty, the dumb caution, while SVG had just destroyed AJ Allmendinger and then took off and gone. And if anybody's going to go at that race and go, hold on, Kai. If anybody's going to look at that race and go, Kyle Larson was the best Xfinity driver today because he won, I just don't think that that's the appropriate way to look at it when you're talking about a win. But, I mean, you're
point.
fine to keep what you want.
Well, the other thing to take into account, again, this is power rankings. In majority of sports, power rankings shift by the week. It's, like it can shift by the, right now, if you go and look at MLB's power rankings, in 3 days, we will have new power rankings. Like, they'll change for NASCAR, and the format that we run this podcast. Like, we're going to have podcasts. We're going to have power rankings. It's going to be a matter of 5-6 weeks or so, like between us actually like stacking these up. It's going to change because that was one of the factors that I was, trying to take into account is what is my power ranking right now, right here as we stand right after Richmond. What this looks like for me, 2 races from now could very well be different. I could have somebody that was down at number 8 be back up there in my top 5. I could have somebody that's sitting at 6 could be up in my top 3. Who knows? Like that could change. It's just, these are gonna shift.
Right. And, that's the fun of it. That's power rankings, to see all the fun things. So hopefully I'll get some overlay stuff while we're talking about that so everybody kind of visualize what we did. Successful. I think the big jumps are the Ty Gibbs. I think a very interesting jump to his career.
So-
We all kind of sensed that he had a little something at the end of last year. But big turnaround. That's probably the biggest surprise on the list that I think I've saw. And then the biggest surprise not on the list, and it's not because we didn't vote him fairly. What's going on, with Chase Elliott. And we don't need to talk into that. We've already done about 2 hours here, and we'll cut some to make it short. But that's, if you're wondering what's going on, interesting look at the season. So
I do feel like that Elliott's on the uptrend though. That's why I put him at 10.
Well, sure couldn't have been any worse than he was last year.
True.
Right.
He's making his way
And he's
up.
sitting
Yeah.
8th in the points. So
Yeah.
Got
Yeah.
a stage one.
Right. I mean, right below Byron at 7. It's like these are gonna flip
Who
around
gives a
and
shit
change.
about
But
points in March?
Martin Truex Jr.
Yeah, okay.
right.
You know who was
I
leading
mean,
the points
Alex
in March
Bowman's
last year?
sitting in the 11th
Alex
spot.
Bowman,
I mean, you know.
dude. Alex
Yeah.
Bowman
Yeah,
was
exactly.
leading
That's
in
what I'm
March
saying.
last
Like,
year.
there's
shit
people that
about
will
points.
care. Right.
All right, Jim,
But
take us out, bro.
either way, like you said, yeah, we're creeping up on along. This may be one of our more jam-packed episodes of the year
Well,
thus
Kai
far.
interrupted, so I got to cut 20 minutes of it.
There's also a
Aye.
4th guy on here talking his head off. So
Hey, we were happy
pleasure
to have
having
it.
you,
This
dude.
has been wonderful. Yeah, exactly. We're not short on any words either, so don't worry about that. But yeah, I think that's going to wrap things up for us this week. Please make sure you check us out on YouTube, Spotify under the name Intentional Wreck. Like, share, subscribe, tell all your friends. You can find us on Twitter and TikTok at intwreckpod. That's at INTWRECKPOD. Please make sure that you check out Nick on Twitch. That'll be at Nick Kaufman 2. So that's twitch.tv/NICKKAUFMAN2. He will be racing with Corey and Finn in their racing league over what is it, the Bandit Racing Series, guys, on
Racing
YouTube.
League, that's right.
Yes,
Wednesday
make sure
nights
you
at 9.
check that out if you want to see that. And again, Nick, thank you for joining us. We were happy to have you. We'd love to have you on again sometime. Let's revisit where we sit on these power rankings here in the spring and see how things shape up as we start cruising out through the summer.
of course, this was a blast. This was fun. I love talking anything racing. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, man.
Absolutely. All right, y'all. Have a good one.
Hoo-yah.